Chapter 737. I'm slandering you? Why don't you ask the person next to you for proof? Faced with Jiang Pengji's question, Wuma Jun's expression froze. He could not suppress his fear and cower. Because you bully the weak and fear the strong, you only dare to confront me. You don't dare to ask her for proof. Her magical skills make you afraid, but at the same time, she gives you hope. You need to use her ability to ascend the throne. As long as you can ascend the throne, even if you never believe she's your biological mother, you can still crawl at her feet and please her like a dog. Am I right? Jiang Pengji stepped on Wuma Jun's sore spot, word by word, poking his sore spot. I didn't, Wuma Jun panicked. His eyes flickered, and he did not dare to look at the woman in red. If you didn't, why are you feeling guilty? Jiang Pengji crossed her arms and sneered at the strange mother and son. She suddenly realized something and said, "Look at my memory. Even if I'm feeling guilty, it's this woman who feels guilty first. After all, she's worse than scum." The woman in red was pointed at and scolded by Jiang Pengji. How could she stand it? She used the rippling, subtle steps and floated like a fairy. Her palms looked feminine, but they contained a strength that could shatter internal organs. You want to kill me just because you can't win? But the question is, can you beat me? Have you forgotten how you died last time? Jiang Pengji dodged sideways and grabbed her collarbone with her right hand. She threw her to a corner of the room. If it was a man, he would have been seduced by the woman's beauty. He would be worse than trash in Jiang Pengji's eyes. She dealt with it easily, as if she was taking a stroll in the park. Her attitude made the woman in red hate and jealous. She could see that Jiang Pengji did not have any special martial arts, but she could beat her. How could this be? It was not fair. Who are you? Why do you know so much? The woman in red was so angry that her teeth were chattering. Haha, you don't even know who I am, but you dare to attack me. You're quite bold. Seeing the woman in red get up from the ground, Jiang Pengji clapped her hands and said to Wuma Jun, "So this woman hasn't told you the truth. Not long after she gave birth to you, she secretly hooked up with Prince Changsho. The two of them had an illicit relationship and gave birth to Lu Huan. In order to pursue wealth and power, she dumped Prince Changsho and abandoned Lu Huan. Lu Huan was adopted by my father. He recognized her as his daughter and raised her for more than 10 years. Do you know why my father was a fool and helped to raise Lu Huan? Think about it. Wouldn't it be delightful to see the children of one's enemy having an illicit affair?" Wuma Jun's face was extremely dark, and his hands were trembling violently. Fear, shock, and indescribable disgust. His former wife, the woman who had a night of passion with him, the woman who was pregnant with his child, was actually his half-sister. Not only did they share the same mother, even their fathers were biological brothers. The image of Lu Huan's face and her protruding belly appeared in his mind. Suddenly, he felt nauseous and vomited. Wuma Jun wasn't the only one who couldn't accept reality. The lady in red couldn't accept it either. Even if she was the one who did all these things, she would still fly into a rage out of humiliation when it was exposed so openly. She thought that she didn't know about her plan and the reason why she deliberately abandoned Lu Huan. She didn't expect Shi to know from the beginning to the end. That man deliberately took advantage of her and played her. B*TCH. The lady in red stared at Jiang Pengji with fear and hatred, as if she wanted to cut her into pieces with her gaze. Jiang Pengji sneered and raised her eyebrows slightly. She asked in return, B*TCH? You're scolding yourself, aren't you? You should reflect on yourself. Who's the B*TCH? What do I have to reflect on? The lady in red panted heavily. Her eyebrows were hideous because of hatred, which more or less ruined her picturesque appearance. Jiang Pengji smiled and tore off the lady's only cover in front of Wuma Jun. She sneered. A lone soul possessed Wang Huijuan's body and harmed Xie Qian and his son. In order to enter the palace for glory and power, she had an unclear relationship with the three royal brothers and gave birth to Wuma Jun and Lu Huan. Another crime was to allow the siblings to have an illicit affair. When you were in Zhongzhou, you always paid attention to the situation in Dongqing. Isn't Takshu The maidservant in my residence, your informant? Don't you know that Lu Huan and Wu Ma Jun are engaged? It's been 3 years since their engagement. Do you dare to say that you don't know? You clearly know that they are half-siblings, but you still watch them get married and have an illicit affair. Can you explain why? The live streaming room immediately exploded. What did they hear? Sister Takshu was the informant arranged by this time-traveling woman? Not only was Jiang Pengji's live streaming room in an uproar, but Wu Ma Jun felt that his worldview had been shattered into pieces. He finally stopped the urge to vomit. He no longer had the thought of being an emperor in his mind. There was only one question lingering in his mind. Why? Why did she watch the siblings have an illicit affair? She was their biological mother. The lady in red did not answer, but Jiang Pengji did. She smiled and said, I think you're indifferent because Lu Huan and Wu Ma Jun are no longer of any use to you, right? The lady in red wanted to ignore it. So what if she was the one who did it? She gave birth to Wu Ma Jun and Lu Huan, but she would leave this world sooner or later. There was no need to invest too much emotion in them. Was it wrong to do so? She felt justified in her heart, but she soon realized that it would not work. She saw that the bullet screen in her live streaming room was full of condemnations against her. The rich people who supported her even said that they would not come anymore. I thought you were just a whore. Now I realize that you were a vicious whore. All right, I'm leaving. You can play around, but if you lose your life, I can't afford to play around. Sigh. Although you're very good-looking, the Japanese ladies are not ugly. You are worse than them. Shameless, lowly whore. The lady in red was furious. She was on the verge of losing control of her emotions. Yes, I was the one who did all these things. At least I dare to take responsibility for what I did. I'm better than those whore who pretended to be a whore. The lady in red pointed at Jiang Pengji and said, Don't think that you are so noble. Go back to your mother's grave and ask her how lowly she was. She stole her own brother-in-law and pushed her sister to Meng Zhan. Now, how did Meng Zhan treat Gu Zhan? She deserved to be avenged. According to the memory of the soul search, the lady in red firmly believed that Lu Shi and Gu Zhan were a couple. However, Jiang Pengji was not so sure about this. If in the original history, Lu Shi and Gu Zhan had given birth to Lu Shi, then how could Wei Ci recognize her at first glance? Lu Shi was Lu Shi and Gu Min's daughter. Could different mothers and the same man give birth to the same daughter? There was no need to think about this. Chapter 738. When had their streamer ever been insulted like that? Jiang Pengji, the person involved, had yet to explode, but the live streaming room was already in an uproar. Huaishou Fang's Huasheng. Bring me my 40-meter machete. I'll chop this *TCH. Love the night. Is this person tired of living? How dare she scold the streamer? I'll slap this son of a bitch to death. Lao Cg Lianmeng. Maybe she's tired of living. After all, the streamer has already killed her once. Mo Lanji. A woman with a golden finger is willful. I feel sorry for my streamer. She's just a salted fish who knows how to live stream. Qing Feng Shui. Haha. The person above, are you sure? The streamer is a salted fish who causes trouble everywhere. How many people are called daddy by her? Jiang Pengji tilted her head and raised her hand to pick her ear. She didn't seem angry at all. What a joke. If this level of trash abuse could make her mentally unbalanced, she wouldn't have lived until now. As a general, mentality was very important. Therefore, Jiang Pengji was still in the mood to probe the woman in red's words. Jiang Pengji rubbed her chin with interest. Her jade-like eyes were like deep pools of water. You just said she deserves to be avenged? Does this refer to my mother, Gu Min, or my stepmother, Gu Jin? Or is it both? The woman in red sneered. Isn't it all the same? Yes, it's all the same, Jiang Pengji said. If that's the case, tell me, what did you do? The woman in red pressed her lips together tightly and didn't say a word. Jiang Pengji continued. My father said that Meng Zhan was still a gentleman. When he married my stepmother, he repeatedly promised that he would treat her well. But after a few years of marriage, Meng Zhan's words and actions completely violated his initial promise. I don't doubt my father's judgment. He and Meng Zhan were classmates and best friends. There was no conflict of interest between them. Meng Zhan didn't have to deceive him. So what did you do? The woman in red didn't expect Jiang Pengji to be so sharp. She felt a vague sense of guilt and excitement. She regarded Lu Shi and his wife as formidable opponents. They had fought many times. That was one of the few times she won. She smiled proudly. Gu Min's bridal chamber didn't bleed. In order for her to gain a firm footing in her maiden home, I sent her a gift secretly so that she could give birth in one night. Jiang Pengji's face turned cold. And then, on the night before Gu Zhan's wedding, she was ambushed by a small group of bandits on the way to the wedding. In the end, it was a close shave, but there were rumors that Gu Zhan had lost her virginity to the bandits. The wedding was just around the corner, so it was impossible for it to fail. You also know that men care a lot about things like falling red. There was no red on the wedding night. Meng Zhan wanted to endure it, but Gu Zhan got pregnant on the first night of the wedding. So, who does this child belong to? There was no paternity test in this era, and the unreliable blood test was still bullshit. Meng Zhan had always felt that he was under a cloud. It was hard for him to talk about it. He wanted to find a chance for Gu Zhan to beat the child and then let the matter go. In the end, Gu Zhan insisted on keeping the child, which became the first knot between the couple. Jiang Pengji laughed. Did you also do something to my stepmother's second child? The lady in red said. Meng Zhan has seen Gu Zhan fooling around with the servants in the manor. How could he not hate her? A stepmother would never do such a thing. The woman in red smiled sweetly. The appearance-changing pill is a good thing. Jiang Pengji's smile turned cold. You are indeed ruthless. You used such a shameful and unpresentable trick very well. So what if it's not presentable? Didn't your mother, who is like a white lotus, also fall? The woman in red sneered. If you didn't really hate my mother, I would have thought that you had forbidden feelings for her. Jiang Pengji sighed and asked one last question. One last question. Were you the one who hurt my mother 14 years ago? Did you almost kill her? The woman in red was about to answer, but she suddenly held back. I won't say. Jiang Pengji laughed. I know the answer even if you don't say it. It's rare to see someone as stupid as you in the world. The woman in red's anger that had just been extinguished burned again. She secretly squeezed the grade 9 loyalty talisman. The system secretly stopped her from doing anything. Host, now is not a good time to make a move. You're also not her opponent. Lu Shi's spirit is very strong. You must wait until she is defenseless or when she is seriously ill and weak. Only then will the success rate be 100%. She is still at her peak. The success rate of the grade 9 loyalty talisman is much lower than normal. Don't take the risk. Retreat first. As long as there is life, there is hope. The system also hated Jiang Pengji to the core, but it could not do anything to her. The woman in red finally regained some of her rationality. She swallowed her anger unwillingly and planned to secretly crush the deity's 1,000 miles talisman to escape. Jiang Pengji's spirit was very strong. How could she miss her little trick? The woman in red had just crushed the deity's 1,000 miles talisman when Jiang Pengji, who was a few meters away, suddenly appeared behind her. In the next moment, she felt a sharp pain in her neck. The sound of bones breaking reached her eardrums. Since you've revealed so much, I'll give you another chance to turn things around. See you next time. Jiang Pengji respectfully sent the woman in red off with a smile. She seemed very happy on the surface, but her heart was gloomy. She had done so many wrong things. Killing her once would be too easy. It would be better to keep her alive and play with her slowly. Seeing Jiang Pengji kill people and the woman in red disappear without a trace, Wu Ma-jun was so scared that he knelt on the ground. Both of them were monsters. When Jiang Pengji's gaze fell on him, Wu Ma-jun was so scared that he crawled on all fours. He wanted to leave this place. As long as he could live, he was willing to do anything. Why are you running? Before Wu Ma-jun could crawl 2 steps, he felt a strong impact on his waist. Jiang Pengji stepped on him. Lanting, don't kill me because of our past relationship. Lu Huan is not your biological sister, but we are siblings. Wu Ma-jun was so scared that his limbs felt weak. His lower abdomen loosened, and a warm orange-yellow liquid flowed out. Snot and tears flowed down his face. Seeing this, Jiang Pengji mocked him. Emotions are useless to me. Why don't you talk about benefits? Wu Ma Jun was inspired. He quickly said, Lanting, tell me what you want. I will give you half of the country as long as you let me go. Jiang Pengji smiled. If you want to talk about benefits, you deserve to die. Your Highness, who asked you not to be a 3-year-old? If he was a 3-year-old, she might have spared his life. Hearing this, Wu Ma Jun knew that Lu Shi would not let him go. Lu Shi, you will die. Wu Ma Jun was lying on the ground. Just as he was about to curse, a foot stepped on the back of his head and pushed him into the ground. Noisy. The foot exerted force, and his head split open. Yellow, green, red, and white matter splattered all over the ground. Chapter 739. Dozens of miles away from the imperial city of Qinzhou, the corpse of a woman in red suddenly appeared. Her head was strangely twisted, and she died with her eyes wide open. Host, you're dead again. In the system's space, the system's cold voice told the woman and read the news. She had been killed twice by the same person in the same way. How ironic. The woman's soul left her body and floated into the system's space. Her face was pale, and she shouted angrily at the living room. Shut up. I know I'm dead. I don't need you to tell me this. After shouting, the woman scolded the system. Is this also my fault? I listened to your advice and gave up on using the level 9 loyalty talisman on her. Why did I still die? It's all because of the talisman you gave me. I didn't teleport her away immediately. I already crushed it. Why did Lu Shi still catch me and crush my neck? Isn't this your fault? The system was silent for a while, then warned the woman in red in an even colder tone. Host, I hope you can calm down. The system can't be wrong. The talisman can't be wrong either. The woman in red laughed coldly. If it's not wrong, why did I die? The deity traversing 1,000 miles talisman is a product of the cultivation plane. Its usage involves the realm of the mind and soul. Lu Shi's mind and brain are very strong, comparable to a cultivator's. She's not a cultivator and has no spiritual power, but she can use her mind to interfere with the activation of the talisman and delay the teleportation portal by 1 to 2 seconds. That is enough time for her to crush your neck. The woman in red was stunned. She asked the system after a while, why didn't you tell me this earlier? If she had known, she wouldn't have foolishly used the talisman in front of Jiang Pengji. The system's tone was still emotionless. You have to buy any information about Emperor Chun, which costs a lot of popularity points. Although you are my host, as a fair and impartial system, I have no obligation to tell you this information. If you are strong enough, you can discover them on your own. Therefore, this is not the system's fault. The fault lies entirely with you. You are too weak. In the face of the system's reasonable answer, the woman in red could not refute it at all. She could only swallow her anger. After calming down, she had to face an even more cruel reality. She had died again. If she wanted to be resurrected, she would need to pay the system 1 billion popularity points in installments. Facing the increasing debt, she felt powerless, but she had to endure it. She gritted her teeth and said, Humph, but it's not like I didn't gain anything. Lu Shi, just wait for the father and daughter to kill each other. While the woman in red waited for her resurrection, Jiang Pengji hummed a tune in a carefree mood. Feng Zhen was very surprised to see this. My lord is in a good mood. Jiang Pengji made a gesture. People are in high spirits when faced with happy events. Your lord will be promoted soon. How can I not be happy? When Feng Zhen heard this, he knew that the 4th prince had been eliminated, and he immediately broke into a smile. Congratulations, my lord. Congratulations, my lord. Feng Zhen half-jokingly bowed and congratulated her. He rubbed his hands together and said, If my lord is promoted, can you give me some benefits? For example, last year's 7-day break? For example, fine wine, delicious food, and beautiful women? For example, gold, silver, and jewelry? Jiang Pengji's smile disappeared. There are rewards, but vacation, delicious food, wine, and beautiful women. None of that. Feng Zhen was speechless. He had helped his lord so much. Why didn't he get these little benefits? He looked as if he had nothing left to live for. He could only accept his fate, put away his playful thoughts, and continue to work. After the looting by the rebel army, the entire Qinzhou imperial city was in chaos. Theft, rape, and looting were common. Yin Lin and the others quickly pacified the chaos in the city, rescued the remaining officials and their families, and protected the royal family. The former crown princess and a few of the royal grandchildren have been found, but the former crown prince's concubines and daughters are dead. It was good enough that they could protect the crown princess and the royal grandchildren. Who would have the time to care about the concubines and daughters? Yin Lin sneered and looked down. It's good that they've been found. What about the third and fourth princes? His subordinate reported, "We've sent people to look for them. I think we'll have news soon." Yin Lin furrowed his brows. He had a bad feeling about this. Although they had found the royal grandchildren, the officials were more concerned about the third and fourth prince's whereabouts. At the very least, these two were adult princes, while the other princes were still too young. After urging them several times, they finally found the two corpses at dusk the next day. The third prince's body was swollen from soaking in the well water. There was a knife in his chest, which was used by Prince Changsho soldiers. The third prince was easy to find, but the fourth prince was more difficult. There was a ghostly power that prevented them from entering the mansion. The power appeared strangely and disappeared suddenly. When they entered the mansion, they found the fourth prince lying on the ground. His head had been smashed by someone. He had died a horrible death. Fengzhen secretly glanced at his lord and shivered. The fourth prince's head couldn't have been smashed by his lord, could it? In the next few days, they prepared for the emperor and the prince's funerals. Two of the princes met with misfortune, and the remaining royal grandchildren are too young. Who do you think will ascend to the throne? According to tradition, the entire country should mourn the death of the emperor. However, this was a special time, so they didn't have to be too particular. They only had to pay attention to the color of their clothes and tie a white strip around their waist. Fengzhen was dressed in a solemn gray robe with a white strip tied around his waist. He looked less unruly and more serious and cautious. Yangxi was also dressed in the same attire, and his entire aura was even colder. He sneered. "It doesn't matter who it is, as long as it's not Prince Changsho or who County Chief Wuma Shang. What do you think?" "We think alike," Fengzhen said. "Prince Changsho has wild ambitions, and Wuma Shang is also a troublemaker. The royal grandchildren are better. They were young, obedient, and sensible. They hadn't even reached their 20s, and they hadn't married yet. This meant that the young emperor couldn't be in power. The oldest grandson was only 11 years old, and the youngest was only 2 years old. According to the tradition, no one was more qualified than the eldest grandson of the emperor. Not only was he the eldest grandson, but he was also the eldest grandson. His status was legitimate, and his bloodline was pure. I'm just afraid that Wuma Shang won't be satisfied." Fengzhen laughed coldly. "So what if he's not satisfied? The alliance is full of old foxes. Unless they've been kicked in the head by a donkey, they won't support him. What was the benefit of supporting Wuma Shang? Even though there was merit in supporting the emperor, there was also merit in supporting the royal grandson. In comparison, supporting the older and more scheming Wuma Shang could easily give him military power if he wasn't careful. He would just be waiting to be stripped. What if he supported the young royal grandson to succeed the throne? If the royal grandson wanted to sit firmly on the throne, he could only choose to use the alliance's feudal vassals. Before he came of age, he wouldn't have any bad intentions, and he would be able to get more benefits. Considering the interests of the feudal vassals, Wuma Shang was definitely not a good choice. Chapter 740. Fengzhen gripped his brush and used the candlelight to illuminate the bamboo slips. He had been working through the night, and he felt like he was about to cross his eyes. "I had a nightmare last night. I dreamed that my lord was dressed in women's clothes." Yangxi, who was working overtime and had not had a midnight snack, heard this and said, "Ah, what a terrible nightmare." Fengzhen and Yangxi often argued and disliked each other. There is only one person who could make them put aside their former enmity and form an alliance: their lord. What happened in the imperial city of Qinzhou was immediately spread to Prince Changshu and the allied army. Both sides had different reactions. Prince Changshu threw his head back and laughed heartily, his mood unprecedentedly carefree. Meng Zhan poured a bucket of cold water on him at this moment. "Your Highness, it's too early to be happy." Prince Changshu was already thinking about the coronation ceremony. He was upset that Meng Zhan had interrupted him, but he couldn't do anything about it. "Why do you say so?" Meng Zhan's tone was cold. "If one emperor dies, they can make another one." Prince Changshu's expression stiffened. He had originally planned to put the emperor under house arrest and let him write the imperial edict to abdicate. Now that the emperor was dead, the alliance army and other important officials had the right to support the new emperor. Thinking that the throne that he yearned for was going to fall into the hands of an unknown young boy, he was flustered and exasperated. Meng Zhan said, "There's no need to be angry, Your Highness. There's no way to make the emperor abdicate his throne to you. Why don't you proclaim yourself as the emperor?" After Prince Changshu heard this, his body trembled violently. He felt as if a clap of thunder had exploded beside his ears, causing his mind to become muddled. "Proclaiming myself as an emperor. Isn't that treason?" Prince Changshu wanted the legitimate throne, but had never thought of proclaiming himself as the emperor. Meng Zhan sneered in his heart. What was orthodox? What was treason? Which of the things that Prince Changshu had done was orthodox? "Your Highness, there's no time to lose. Make a decision now." Meng Zhan said, "If we're late, we might not have this chance in the future." Prince Changshu was upset, but deep down, he agreed with Meng Zhan's suggestion. Proclaim himself emperor. On the other side, the allied forces were also dumbfounded by this news. Did Prince Changshu send a secret elite force to attack the imperial city of Qinzhou? Did Yang Jian and Lu Shi's armies arrive in time to save countless important ministers and their families? The emperor died while he was fleeing? With the death of the emperor, the entire nation mourned. It was not appropriate for the feudal vassals to continue drinking and having fun. They could only reluctantly change into dark clothes as a sign of mourning. Some people were concerned about the death of the emperor, while others were concerned about Lu Shi and Yang Jian's forces. Su Bei felt as though a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He finally didn't have to continue hiding the news, nor did he have to bear the attacks of the other feudal vassal forces. He could even hold his head high in front of Su Fei. From an outsider's point of view, Lu Shi and Yang Jian's actions were all under Su Bei's orders. Lu Shi and Yang Jian had made a great contribution this time, and Su Bei wanted to remember it. Little did they know that to Su Bei, this credit had fallen from the sky. It was free. Other than Su Bei, Lu Shi, as Lu Shi's father, was also congratulated by the crowd. Huang Song secretly said to Lu Shi, "Congratulations, Governor. I'm afraid no one can compare to Lanting's great contribution in saving the emperor." While many feudal vassals were enjoying themselves, Lu Shi had led his troops to the imperial city of Qinzhou. This was an achievement that no one could be envious of. There was a smile on Lu Shi's face as he dealt with the nobles who came to congratulate him. Lanting is still young and full of vigor. He doesn't deserve such praise. He still needs more experience. Although he spoke humbly, everyone could see that Lu Shi was in a good mood. Another person was also in a good mood. This person was the county chief of Shanghai, Wuma Shang. The emperor had passed away without leaving behind any edicts. What did this mean? It meant that his opportunity had come. Now that the world was in chaos, there was an urgent need for a king with prestige and ability to stabilize the world. Looking at the Dongqing royal family, who was more suitable than him, he knew that the emperor had other princes and grandsons, but Wuma Shang didn't think much of them. During critical times, special treatment was needed. The succession of the throne should also be flexible, and only the virtuous should be able to take it. And Shui followed Wuma Shang, coldly observing his emotional changes. He laughed to himself. In the current alliance army, the only forces that hoped for Wuma Shang to ascend to the throne were Wuma Shang himself and Shui. Every man for himself, and heaven and earth would destroy him. What substantial benefit would supporting Wuma Shang to ascend to the throne bring to the other feudal vassals? The answer was none. Therefore, Wuma Shang had celebrated too early. And Shui did not say this out loud. Instead, he went against his will and complimented Wuma Shang profusely. Wuma Shang was in a good mood. With a wave of his hand, he borrowed a lot of manpower, horses, and rations from Shui. The alliance army passed through Jiamen Pass and marched valiantly towards Qinzhou. They thought that they would encounter Prince Changshou's main force, but unexpectedly, they were unimpeded along the way. They didn't encounter Prince Changshou's army at all. The scouts investigated for several days and finally confirmed that Prince Changshou had retreated to the border of Qinzhou. They didn't know what he was planning. Why did he retreat for no reason? Everyone was confused. Only a few people could see clearly. A storm is brewing. Feng Zhu sighed as he looked at the sky outside the tent. Prince Changshou is playing hard to get. Huang Song didn't understand. Playing hard to get? Cheng Jing said. It's not just playing hard to get. I think he has other plans. Huang Song looked at Feng Zhu, then at Cheng Jing. Both of them had the same expression. Only he was still confused. He felt like his IQ had been crushed by the two strategists again. For the Alliance Army, Prince Changshou's retreat was definitely good news. At least they didn't have to expend troops to fight anymore. The imperial city of Qinzhou had been through the flames of war. The city gates looked desolate and dilapidated. The residences in the city had been cleaned up, but traces of it could still be seen. The Alliance Army didn't move their troops into the city. Instead, they chose to station outside the city to reassure the people. Because many of the officials and their families had been taken away by Prince Changshou, the court was short of manpower. Feng Zhen, Yang Si, Yin Lin, and the others took this opportunity to take up positions. After entering the city, the chief of Shanghai County, Wuma Shang, has been very active. He's trying to rope in the officials and vassals without any disguise. Idiot. Jiang Pingji sat paralyzed on the main seat, sprawled on the table without a care for her image. She looked like she had been hollowed out. She thought that she should bring a few more strategists with her next trip. At least they would have more manpower. Lucy drank his sake with a calm expression. He's still too eager for quick success. If he planned it step by step, it might be possible. The more impatient Wuma Shang was, the less likely they would choose him. How could an ambitious Wuma Shang be any easier to control than a son of the emperor? As they spoke, light footsteps came from outside. Huijuan's gentle voice sounded. Lang Jun, may I come in now? Come in. Lucy glanced at Huijun. His eyes were calm. Huijuan's appearance was only half the same as before. If she had been beautiful before, she was at most a delicate beauty now. Even if someone familiar came, they would only think that she looked familiar. They wouldn't suspect that she was the late Demon Empress. Chapter 741. There were 4 major evil arts in Asia: the Dai Nation's sex-changing technique, the Japanese makeup technique, the Korean plastic surgery technique, and the Hua Nation's Photoshop technique. When the 4 great evil arts were activated at the same time, not to mention the enemy, even their own mother would not be able to recognize them. Huijuan's appearance was too eye-catching and could easily attract trouble. It was indeed necessary to conceal it a little. Lang Jun, the court attire has been prepared and delivered. Do you want to try it on and see how big it is? If it doesn't fit, I can alter it. Huijun came in with a stack of clothes and some accessories. Her posture was gentle and humble, without any hint of seduction. All right, I'll try. Jiang Pingji was also a district magistrate, but because of the special circumstances of her appointment, she had yet to wear a court uniform. However, she had to attend the emperor's burial ceremony and the new emperor's ascension ceremony, so she had to wear court clothes. Therefore, he could only ask people to work overtime to make a set. Looking at the neatly folded court dress, Jiang Pingji smiled and took it to the room in the back hall to try it on. In this era, the difference in status was obvious. Every detail could be seen. Clothing had already become a symbol to distinguish one's status. Looking at the scattered items, she closed the live stream room and put them on one by one, wearing a ribbon over her robe. After getting dressed, she came out and opened the live broadcast room. Lu Shi and Hui Jun were stunned when they saw the handsome young man walking out of the back hall. It really fulfilled the saying, "A gentleman is peerless in the world, and a stranger is like a jade." The audience in the streaming room had long been accustomed to Jiang Pengji's emphasis on personal privacy. None of them left, waiting for the streaming to resume. Sure enough, 10 minutes later, the live broadcast room opened again, and it was time for them to compete on hand speed and luck. Nongfu Shanquan Yudiangshuan. Oh, let me see. Who is this elegant young man in front of me? Cafeteria Daffin Auntie. It's her. It was her. That's her. Our streamer, Jiang Pengji. Jianghu Baliansha. To the person above, you must be poisonous. I couldn't help but sing it out. Song of Black Mass. I've always wanted to see the streamer in court attire. I've been looking forward to it for so long, and now that I've finally seen it, I'm so touched that I'm crying. Happy spot. Hee, but I'm looking forward to the host wearing a royal robe and a crown. Jiang Pengji couldn't be serious for more than 3 seconds. She shook the ceremonial tablet in her hand in disdain and furrowed her brows. When officials go to court with this thing, are they preparing to use this board to slap people if they can't beat them with words? As soon as she said that, the audience's bullet screen became countless ellipses. Lu Shi, who was drinking sake, almost choked. Lanting, don't joke around. It's fine if you say it in private, but you can't say it outside. Lu Shi coughed again. His daughter's way of thinking was indeed different from others. The tablet was used to make notes and cheat sheets. It was similar to a memo, but in his daughter's mouth, it became a weapon for fighting. If the officials were really like what she said, swinging the ceremonial tablet to hit people just because they couldn't agree with her, would the court still be able to hold court? Huijun also covered her mouth with her sleeve. She could not hide the smile in her eyes. In a few days, Longjuan's court attire will need to be changed again. The difference in status meant that the style, material, and accessories of the court attire would change greatly. Naturally, you would have to make a new one. You have a lot of confidence in me. Huijun nodded and lowered her eyebrows. Her cherry lips spread into a smile. No matter how good her makeup was, it still could not hide the unique elegance of her eyes. Langjun, you keep your promise. If I don't believe you, who else can I believe? Jiang Pengji laughed and threw the ceremonial tablet on the table. She said in a pleading tone, I can't continue with your words. Lu Shi watched silently eating melons and silently reflecting. Did he give birth to a daughter or a son? It seems a little small. I'll take it back and change it. Huijun was smiling when a servant outside reported, My lord, the Crown Prince's manor has sent an invitation. They invite you to the manor for a chat. Jiang Pengji was stunned. An invitation from the Crown Prince's manor? Huijun was half kneeling to help her tidy up her accessories. She was also stunned when she heard that. It should be from the Crown Prince's wife. She was still the Crown Prince's wife. After the late Emperor's burial and the young Emperor's ascension, the Crown Prince's wife would be the Empress Dowager. Jiang Pengji frowned and threw the invitation on the table. She said, Why did the Crown Prince's wife send me an invitation? I'm not going. A sly look flashed across Huijuan's eyes. She raised her hand and picked up the invitation. She put it under her nose and sniffed it. Langjun, it's better for you to go. Jiang Pengji turned to look at her. Why? Take a sniff and see if there's a faint fragrance on it. Huijun handed the invitation back to her and said with a smile, The Crown Prince's wife can't stand the loneliness of being a widow. She wants to invite you to be her guest. If you miss this opportunity, you won't have another chance. Jiang Pengji's fingers froze. She and the 150,000 viewers in the streaming room were stunned. What? Huijun said with a smile. This fragrance is a secret fragrance used in the palace. The main fragrance is the Sleeping Beauty. It's made with 24 kinds of precious spices. It has a stimulating effect on the relationship between a man and a woman. The fragrance is sweet but not strong, but it can attract people's feelings. Lu Shi coughed heavily and stood up with his wine cup and pot. You guys continue chatting. I'm a little tired. I'll go back to my room to rest. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Lu Shi walked to the door and suddenly stopped. If you're going out for a banquet tonight, remember to come back before dawn tomorrow. Jiang Pengji was speechless. Father, do you remember that you gave birth to a daughter, not a son? Huijun blushed and said awkwardly, the crown prince's wife put this fragrance on the invitation. She's obviously inviting you to spend the night with her. Jiang Pengji sneered. Her husband just passed away, and her father-in-law hasn't even passed the 7th birthday. She's already thinking about how to win over her husband? Huijun sighed softly. I've seen the crown prince's wife. She must be doing this for the sake of her legitimate son. The crown prince's wife was a woman in the backyard. She wasn't of noble birth and had limited knowledge. She didn't know that the feudal vassals were determined to support the young emperor. She only saw Wu Ma Shang jumping up and down. She was worried that her son's throne would be gone and her Empress Dowager would be ruined. Because of their sensitive identities, if she and her son couldn't become the emperor and Empress Dowager, they would die. In her panic, she could only come up with this plan. Of course, other than helplessness, this crown prince's wife had always been like this. According to your servant's understanding, this crown prince's wife isn't as well-behaved as she seems. The crown prince is promiscuous and has countless beauties in his backyard. The crown prince's wife is lonely and has a fake relationship with the eunuchs who serve her. Now that the crown prince has passed away and the royal family is in trouble, she's even more unscrupulous. Huijun smiled. It's understandable that she wants to recruit you as her husband. As long as she could win over Jiang Pengji, it was equivalent to tying the Lu father and son to her side. In the eyes of outsiders, she was a handsome young man who wasn't even 18 years old. The crown prince's wife had taken advantage of him. Does Lang Jun want to decline or accept this? She looked at the invitation and suddenly said to the outside, find someone to call Manager Feng here. Chapter 742. Huijun was stunned. Why did Lang Jun want to call Manager Feng over? Could it be that Lang Jun not only wanted to squeeze out Manager Feng's brain power and physical strength, but he also wanted him to sell his body? Jiang Pengji saw her expression and laughed. Is your Lang Jun that kind of person? Zishur has been complaining about not having time to rest, not having time to flirt, and asking me for beauties and wine. Now, there's a noble woman who comes to me. What a great opportunity. It was clearly a family matter, but when Jiang Pengji said it, it had a completely different meaning. She was the crown princess. Even if she came to him on her own, she couldn't be compared to an ordinary woman. Hearing the harshness and teasing in Jiang Pengji's words, Huijun covered her mouth with her sleeves. Even her lovely, watery eyes were smiling. I'm afraid Lang Jun is going to be disappointed, Jiang Pengji asked her. Oh? Disappointed in what? Your servant thought that someone as observant as Feng Lang Jun would have a clear view of the affairs between men and women. What kind of woman can seek pleasure and what kind of woman should be avoided? Everyone has their own set of standards. The crown princess's identity is special. It's fine if it's an ordinary man, but Feng Lang Jun is Lang Jun's official. Why would he touch such a sensitive and troublesome woman? Even if Jiang Pengji wanted to push Feng Jun out to be a scapegoat, Feng Jun would pretend to be pure and innocent and refuse to comply. Listening to Huijun's serious analysis, Jiang Pengji, who was listening attentively, suddenly burst into laughter. Haha, don't worry. I called Zishur over to discuss some matters. How could I ask him to sell his body? Even if I'm willing, I'm afraid that the crown princess won't be willing. Jiang Pengji stopped laughing. Her eyes were still bright and sparkling. Huijun's cheeks turned red. She said in annoyance, Lang Jun is used to teasing people. If it weren't for your words, I wouldn't have made a fool of myself. As she spoke, Feng Jun's footsteps could be heard from outside. Feng Jun was no longer dressed as casually as he used to be. After all, now that he had a nominal position, he looked more formal now. Huijun bowed and retreated into the back hall. After Feng Jun bowed, he sat up straight. May I know why my lord has summoned me so urgently? There were too many vacancies in the imperial court. Jiang Pengji found herself a position with a rank of 2,000 dong. Her salary was similar to that of a county chief. Although she was a military officer, it was a special period. She did not have any specific military power in her hands. It was still a nominal position that sounded nice and convenient for her to move around in the imperial court. Jiang Pengji told him about the invitation from the crown prince's manor. She told him about the suggestive scent on the invitation. Feng Zhen actually laughed wickedly and said mockingly, "Since it's such a good thing, why don't you make a trip, my lord?" In any case, she was a crown princess. She was the most respected female leader of the country after the Empress, Empress Dowager, and Empress Dowager. Jiang Pengji rolled her eyes in annoyance. "Stop pretending to be deaf and dumb. If your lord could attend the banquet, would she need you to come?" When Feng Zhen heard this, he almost knelt down in front of Jiang Pengji. The meaning behind his lord's words was quite profound. He said righteously, "Your Highness, I don't sell my body." Feng Zhen acted as if he was going to die, defending his innocence. Jiang Pengji wanted to slap him. The audience in the streaming room was a bunch of drama queens. They laughed and messed around with the bullet screen. Jing, quick. Feng Zhen, the lady you wanted is here. Don't be shy. Go and take the crown princess down. Shu Shanyali, Tisk, TSK. This is the year-end bonus given by my lord, and the target is the crown princess. How many people can't even dream of this? It's not that I want to criticize him, but Feng Zhen talking about integrity and innocence is as interesting as a bald guy talking about how to maintain his hair. Lianhua, the streamer, is really bad. She's directing the trouble to Feng Zhen. I still feel sorry for Feng Zhen. He quit using hanshi powder because of the streamer. He's so busy with work that he doesn't have time to play around, drink, and make merry. He's exhausted and has to feed the tiger with his body. I feel sorry for him for a second. Jianghu Baliansha. Feng Zhen reaches out his hand towards the door in despair. He's crying and muttering, "Jing Rong, save me." Faced with all the ridicule on the screen, Jiang Pengji couldn't help but laugh. Based on your looks, the crown princess won't be interested in you. Even if she does, TSK. Jiang Pengji sized Feng Zhen up from head to toe. She said meaningfully, "People say that women are like wolves and tigers in their 30s. This crown princess is still attractive and a middle-aged woman. Zisher ate too much hanshi powder in the past. Now that his body is weak, I'm afraid she'll squeeze you dry. His legs are so weak that he can't walk." Feng Zhen's expression was that of a dead salted fish. He must have followed a fake lord. Jiang Pengji coughed lightly and restrained her playful thoughts. She said seriously, "All right, I called you over to discuss serious matters. I'm not joking." Feng Zhen sat upright. The crown princess sent an invitation. "Will my lord go or not?" "Of course I'll go. The eldest grandson of the emperor is young and unable to govern. The mother is strong, but the son is weak. I'm afraid it's inevitable that she'll listen to politics from behind the curtains." Feng Zhen's expression was very serious. One couldn't see any signs of indecency. His jade-like eyes shone with shrewdness and calculation. If she wants the court to be stable, the crown princess has to rely on the powerful feudal lords and win over the court officials. Now that she's sent an invitation to my lord, I'm afraid that's her intention. It's just that this crown princess is willing to throw caution to the wind. She's willing to make such a sacrifice. It's a pity that my lord is going to disappoint her. Feng Zhen could understand the crown princess's actions. A simple conflict of interest wouldn't be enough to make her feel at ease. Adding a layer of relationship between a man and a woman would make their cooperation more solid. But his lord's gender was exactly the same as the crown princess's. What do you mean by the crown princess is willing to throw caution to the wind? If your lord dares to accept her, it's clear that she's throwing caution to the wind. If an old cow tries to eat young grass, the one at a disadvantage is obviously the one being eaten. Jiang Pengji laughed impatiently. "Accompany me to the crown prince's residence." He couldn't accept the crown princess, but he couldn't refuse the obvious benefits. Feng Zhen was surprised. "Has my lord thought it through?" Jiang Pengji laughed. "I'm just pretending to be polite. It's not like I don't know how to do that. With my current merits and military strength, it won't be difficult for me to become the governor of Wanzhou. But the other feudal lords don't want to see that happen. They'll most likely try to stop me and cause trouble. If I can start with the crown princess and get her help from the side, this matter will be in the bag. It would be a pity not to take advantage of a free gift. Fengzhen bowed and said, yes. The imperial city of Chenzhou had been looted, and the crown prince's residence was no exception. Jiang Pengji was led by a servant to the courtyard where the banquet was held. Chapter 743. Jiang Pengji's lips curled into a mocking smile. Before they reached their destination, she could already hear laughter and the beautiful music of a string instrument. Jiang Pengji said, her husband just passed away and her father-in-law passed away, but she doesn't seem to mind. Previously, Huijun had said that the crown princess was a pitiful person who had her own problems. Jiang Pengji had thought that she was a strong mother and that she seduced a man outside during the mourning period for the sake of her son's throne and their lives. Now that she saw it, she was overthinking. Jiang Pengji arrived with Fengzhen and saw the crown princess sitting at the head of the table. She wasn't in mourning or mourning. There was no lack of meat and wine on the table. The singers in the hall were faintly discernible in their light clothing. Seeing Jiang Pengji come over, the crown princess hurried forward. There was a charcoal brazier in the room, and it was as warm as spring. The crown princess's attire was also light, showing off the charm of a mature woman. Jiang Pengji smelled the same fragrance from her as the bamboo slips, but it was stronger and had an even better aphrodisiac effect. I've long heard that you're young and talented. Now that I've seen you, you're indeed a man of striking appearance. Fengzhen was still watching the show, but when he heard the crown princess's words, he almost spat. The crown princess's style was rather bold and unrestrained. This was no longer a hint, but a clear statement. Jiang Pengji was about to sit down when the crown princess held her hand and coaxed her to sit next to her. The crown princess smiled and looked at Jiang Pengji with her charming eyes. Her voice was sweet and cloying. Does you want to distance yourself from me, Minister General? Jiang Pengji smiled but didn't say anything. In fact, she felt the same as the viewers in the streaming room. What was distance? They weren't familiar with each other at all. The crown princess is the future mother of the country. I dare not overstep my boundaries. Jiang Pengji said respectfully and secretly withdrew her hand. She didn't know how much makeup the crown princess used to protect her skin. Her palm was sticky and made her feel like she was being rubbed by a snake. This is a family banquet. How can there be a ruler and a minister? Middle Minister General, there is no need to be so formal. Hearing Jiang Pengji address her as future mother of the country, the crown princess's expression brightened and her attitude became more attentive and urgent. Fuxing Qianxing, I'm so angry. I haven't even touched the host's hand yet. How can this old woman take advantage of me? Sophie Tang Tang, let go of the master and let me do it. Ah, goddess. Not to mention the feudal era. Even in our era, when the husband and father-in-law have just died and haven't been buried, no one would run to drink, eat meat, and keep a gigolo, right? You even want to lay your hands on our anchor? Do you think I, the Empress, is dead? Bitter life. You're shameless. I'm the host's wife, the other person in the household register. Jiang Pengji was taken advantage of by the crown princess as a teenager. Most of the audience was happy to see that. Only the rumored wife fans were still fighting. Aya, why is the commander's hand so cold? Do you need me to warm it up for you? As soon as they sat down, the crown princess moved to Jiang Pengji's side. She held Jiang Pengji's hand with both of her hands. She wanted to put her hands deep in her chest. Fengzhen, who was watching from below, was dumbfounded. There was actually such a thing in this world? Jiang Pengji's face darkened, and she pulled her hand away. The crown princess wasn't angry. She ordered the dancers to pour wine for her. Hearing the order, the dancers in thin clothes started to dance again. There were also two people nestled in Fengzhen's arms. It made him look beautiful. Jiang Pengji secretly made a mental note to Fengzhen. She had brought this fellow here in preparation for him to help her out of this predicament, not for him to hug and flirt with a big sister. Fengzhen secretly felt a chill run down his spine. He glanced at Jiang Pengji guiltily, then continued to hug her and drink. The crown princess had really taken a liking to Jiang Pengji, this fresh meat. She was preparing to do something with her. But before doing that, she still had to sound out the previous dynasty and the alliance army to see if they favored the eldest grandson of the emperor or Wu Ma Shang from Hu County to inherit the throne. This concerned her future. Just as she had guessed, the crown princess planned to use this matter to tie the Lu father and son to her side. As for why she had chosen Jiang Pengji as a breakthrough point, it was also a hobby of the crown princess. Lu Shi was older than the crown princess. How could he be as tender and delicious as a young man? Jiang Pengji didn't hide it, but she didn't give the crown princess an accurate answer either. She just let the crown princess guess on her own. You're such a torturous little sweetheart. Are you trying to make me anxious? The crown princess's words had a double meaning. She rubbed against Jiang Pengji and exhaled softly, but she was secretly anxious. She had used the secret fragrance of the palace. She had increased the dosage. Smelling it could make a man and a woman's love and sex more harmonious. However, as long as one had some willpower, it wouldn't have much of an effect. Others only smelled it, but the crown princess rubbed it all over her body. The effect wasn't overbearing, but it was lasting. Under the stimulation of her body's desire, the crown princess's words and actions were more open than usual. She couldn't stop trying to seduce Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji was as still as a mountain. She continued to drink and watch the dance calmly. She looked like an old monk in meditation, which made the crown princess's teeth itch. How would I dare? Jiang Pengji looked at the crown princess with a faint smile. Her tone was calm. The crown princess's breath smelled like orchids. She whispered in her ear, "You still don't dare? I've already made it so obvious." Jiang Pengji continued to say, without changing her expression, "I'm just a district magistrate. To put it bluntly, the so-called commander-in-chief is just an empty title." The crown princess covered her mouth and laughed. "Your servant's little sweetheart. If you say this, how many people will die of shame and anger? You're not even 29 years old, but you're already in control of Wanzhou. If you're just a small official like this, everyone else will be inferior to you." In control of Wanzhou? That's just a title without a title. The crown princess said, "It's better to have a title without a title. According to my little sweetheart's ability, it's only a matter of time before you have a title." Jiang Pengji's smile was finally less resistant and more sincere. The crown princess's words have really touched my heart. If there's a day when it's true, I'll definitely thank you for what you said today. The crown princess understood what Jiang Pengji meant. She understood that Jiang Pengji was also looking for an ally. She immediately hugged the pole and climbed up. After 2 hours of banquet, the crown princess's face was already flushed red. Her whole body fell limp on Jiang Pengji's shoulder. Jiang Pengji secretly knocked her out, then took the opportunity to escape with Feng Zhen, who was still unsatisfied. "You can't help it all. What's the use of having you?" She fanned herself. Her whole body reeked of alcohol and the fragrance of the crown princess. Feng Zhen laughed rudely. Although he didn't do anything like holding his belly, it was enough to make Jiang Pengji's face darken. "This is my lord's good fortune. I dare not disturb you." Feng Zhen had an expression that said, "I'm doing this for my lord's good," which made Jiang Pengji's hands itch. She wanted to slap him, but she was afraid that if she killed him, the overtime team would lose a main force. This is really a big loss. Jiang Pengji rubbed her arms. "Go back and take a good bath. I feel that smell everywhere." Feng Zhen shook his head. Chapter 744. What was more despicable than having sex without mercy? It was probably because the crown princess was interested in Jiang Pengji. She hinted at it and even personally applied a perfume that stimulated sexual desire. Jiang Pengji looked like an old monk in meditation and watched the crown princess being tortured for more than 2 hours. She even knocked her out before she left. The crown princess slowly woke up. Her eyes were full of shame and anger. Her alluring body was already limp like water. She couldn't move at all. "Help me back and find Xiao Xiazi." The backyard was lonely. She had a husband who liked new things and was lustful. The crown princess, who had given birth to a child, was naturally neglected. However, she wasn't someone who liked to be wronged. There was an eunuch who had been cleansed after he came of age. He was good at serving women. The crown princess liked this eunuch very much. If the crown prince didn't come to her yard, she would spend 9 out of 10 days with him. Not long after, Xiaoxiazi arrived. He was burly and had a beard. From his appearance alone, he looked more manly than the average man. Seeing Xiaoxiazi, the crown princess's eyes were as gentle as water. There was undisguised lust in her eyes. She reached out to him. Not long after, the dormitory was filled with moaning sounds that made one's imagination run wild. It was filled with an ambiguous atmosphere. Lucy laughed when he saw his daughter come back reeking of alcohol. Why didn't you stay in the crown prince's residence? What's the point of staying in the crown prince's residence? The crown princess is in her 30s, and she's like a wolf and a tiger. I'm afraid I can't handle her. Jiang Pengji looked at Lu Shi and said in surprise, "Didn't you say you were tired and went to bed? Why aren't you asleep yet?" Lu Shi was speechless at Jiang Pengji's answer. Could he say that he was happy to see his daughter suffer a setback? Speaking of which, I'm quite open-minded. Lu Shi decisively avoided the last 2 questions and gently changed the topic. If you like women, as long as it doesn't interfere with the reproduction of the family line, it's fine if you like them. They're just toys for fun. Don't get too addicted to them. I heard that the crown princess was beautiful when she was young. Did you not fall for her at all? Feng Zhen, who was standing to the side, felt as if he had opened the door to a whole new world. His worldview had completely collapsed. Before Jiang Pengji could answer, the bullet screen in the streaming room was filled with jubilation. Huan Yuowu, Father Lu Shi, look at me. I'm your daughter-in-law. Good character name. The love rivals above and below are such an eyesore. Draw your sword. Da Shu Xiaobing. The host's father isn't quite open-minded. He's clearly too open-minded. We mortals can't reach his level of understanding. Jiang Pengji facepalmed. It was one thing for the audience in the streaming room to join in the fun, but even Lu Shi was making fun of her? No, not interested. If father was in such a hurry to have a grandson, wasn't there still a concubine brother in the Fu? Now, he was almost 13 years old. He's not young anymore. Shu brother should find a suitable wife so that others won't say that the Lu residence treats him harshly. Hearing Jiang Pengji mention the illegitimate son in the manner, Lu, she said meaningfully, "There's no hurry. It's not the right time yet." Jiang Pengji said, "Father, it's fine as long as you know what you're doing. No matter what, my brother's marriage can't be sloppy. Back then, even my sister married into the royal family with a dowry of 10 miles. There are still people talking about it. If I treat my brother's marriage harshly, people outside will say that I'm not." There is a clear distinction between the legitimate and the concubine-born. There is a huge gap between them that was difficult to cross. The illegitimate sons and daughters of the Lu residents were treated fairly well. If they were in other families, the status of the children born of concubine-born will be slightly higher than that of the children of ordinary families. For example, when the legitimate daughters of many aristocratic families got married, they would even let the concubine-born daughters accompany them. From this, it could be seen how big the gap was between the legitimate and the concubine-born daughters. Lu Shi looked down and said helplessly, "The people outside can say whatever they want, as long as Lanting doesn't feel wronged." The audience in the streaming room was stunned. So the host had a brother born of a concubine born? In fact, the old audience knew about this, but the presence of the illegitimate brother was almost non-existent. Many people had forgotten about him. Watching Lu Shi's back as he left, Feng Zhen said in surprise, "That's strange. Why is the old master so indifferent to the illegitimate son? After all, he was a son who could carry on the family line, even if his status was low and he was born of a concubine born." Jiang Pengji asked, "You think he's indifferent?" Feng Zhen nodded. At the mention of the illegitimate son, Lu Shi's mood didn't change. It was as if he wasn't his son and was just an insignificant decoration. However, Lu Shi's attitude made Feng Zhen feel more at ease. "I was worried that the Lord's brother would get in the way of the Lord, but now it seems that I'm not worried anymore." In Feng Zhen's opinion, No matter how biased Lu Shi was, deep down, he still cared about carrying on the family line. Although the legitimate daughter was good, she was still a woman. She couldn't carry on the family line like a man could. Now that he had personally witnessed the conversation between the father and daughter, Feng Zhen felt as if he had taken a tranquilizer. Don't worry. Let's continue worrying. My father's attitude is my father's. Who knows what that illegitimate brother will think? Just like how Lu Zhai didn't know the truth of her parentage until her death, the illegitimate brother was the same. Feng Zhen shook his head and laughed. If the Lord's brother really wanted to fight for the throne, he wouldn't be far from meeting the King of Hell. Look at the people under the Lord. Which one of them was easy to provoke? If they were determined to plot against someone, it was guaranteed that the person wouldn't even know how they died. Anyway, we can't let them grow wild. If they wanted to prevent the scandal of brothers fighting each other, they had to cut off the person's ambition from the root. They had to either kill them with excessive praise or cripple them. Either way, they couldn't let their ambitions grow. Jiang Pingji said in a low voice, I understand this, but now is not the time. After all, we are brothers. After saying that, she sighed in her heart. She felt that the people around her weren't normal. Her father, Lu Shi, was too open-minded. A few of her subordinates urged her to attack her illegitimate brother. If it were someone else, the normal scene wouldn't be that the father was strict and the subordinates valued the Lord's character. Not to mention urging the Lord to fight with her brother. Even if the Lord had a conflict with her brother, she would advise them. But for her, everyone wanted to see the world in chaos. The imperial city of Chenzhou had experienced a war, and Prince Changshuo's army was eyeing the city covetously. With the internal and external troubles, everything was simple, whether it was the funeral of the late emperor or the coronation of a new emperor. The construction of the late emperor's mausoleum had started on the day he was registered. Every year, a huge amount of money was spent. But before it was finished, Dongqing Shangjing had suffered an earthquake and most of the mausoleum had collapsed. Even if it hadn't collapsed, the emperor had to die in Qinzhou, and the coffin had to be carried to Shangyang County in Wanzhou for burial. The officials discussed and decided to choose another site near the imperial city of Qinzhou to build the mausoleum. Before the mausoleum was completed, the coffin would be placed in the royal temple. Special times called for special treatment. Chapter 745. On the day of the coffin, the weather was as cold as usual. Between heaven and earth, it was a blur. The cold wind blew the white curtains and flags. The former emperor's coffin was extravagant. It was decorated with gold, silver, and jewels and tied with white satin. At first glance, it did not look like a coffin for a dead person, but more like a meticulously carved work of art. Jiang Pengji wore a loose and neat court robe. She watched the funeral coldly as it proceeded in an orderly manner. The national treasury was empty and they owed a lot of debts. Many officials said that everything should be simple, but traces of extravagance could be seen everywhere. Apart from the fake sobbing, the fluttering of the flags and the cold wind, the footsteps of the people, and the snorting of the horses, there were no other sounds. Jiang Pengji followed the MC's instructions and mingled among the court officials. Her expression was as cold as a delicate porcelain doll. Of course, that was only on the surface. In fact, she was multitasking and watching the bullet screen in the streaming room. The funeral of the emperor, even if it was during a critical period, was very meaningful to the audience in the streaming room. Listening to the audience's conversation, it seemed that the funeral was specially broadcasted by the TV station. Jiang Pengji looked down and used the bullet screen to kill time. She occasionally said a few words. After the emperor's coffin was sent to the temple, she was about to proceed with the last few steps. Jiang Pengji's sharp ears heard the sound of galloping horses in the distance. She secretly shifted her gaze outside and vaguely saw an armored soldier hurriedly dismount from his horse. He held a bamboo scroll in his hand. Did something happen? Jiang Pengji frowned. The messenger's movement was discovered by others. The MC was the royal clan chief. His face suddenly darkened. The officials around them whispered to each other and discussed animatedly. Jiang Pengji calmed herself down and listened to the conversation between the messenger and the ministers of the royal court. What? Prince Changsho is praying to heaven and ascending the throne outside Qinzhou today, proclaiming himself emperor? The court officials' faces were as black as ash. Prince Changsho must have done it on purpose, right? Why did he have to choose the 7th day of the former emperor's death to worship heaven and proclaim himself emperor? It was a slap in the face. What should we do now? No one expected Prince Changsho to be so daring as to proclaim himself emperor. What else can we do? Of course, we have to find a way to appease the people, then organize the troops to suppress the rebels. But if we mobilize our troops, I'm afraid we'll be the enemies of Prince Changsho and the Meng family of Zhangzhou. The alliance army has more than 400,000 soldiers. Why can't they take care of Prince Changsho and his kind? An old official did not care at all. That's right. Our 400,000 soldiers are still unable to kill a single thief? You think too highly of Prince Changsho. They were the legitimate ones. Prince Changsho did not have a legitimate title and was a traitor that everyone had the right to punish. Once he issued a declaration of war, all the knowledgeable people in the world would be able to suppress him. In this era, it was important to have a good reason to fight a war. When Prince Changsho besieged Qinzhou, it was also in the name of purging the emperor's followers and punishing the evildoers. He could not attack whoever he wanted. In one scroll, everyone in the world had a justifiable reason to attack Prince Changsho. Similarly, a war could not be won just because one had a good reason. Many of the old officials only saw their own benefits and did not consider the reality of the situation at all. They more or less took it for granted. Prince Changsho did not dare to go head-to-head with the Allied forces because they could not afford to waste time. Similarly, the Allied forces were in a state of disunity. They did not want to go head-to-head. Although they were somewhat naive, the officials knew that they had to support the Allied forces and could not afford to have a conflict with them. When the funeral ended, the news of Prince Changsho's ascension to the throne spread. Many people frowned. Some people scolded Prince Changsho, some remained silent, and there were also people in the middle who tried to smooth things over. Jiang Pengji looked at the various expressions of the people and sneered. There are so many dramas happening these few days. Guess what Prince Changsho's next move will be? Feng Zhun sneered and said, most likely he will divide the Allied forces and cause animosity among the people. According to Prince Changsho's original plan, he should have captured the emperor and forced him to abdicate the throne. Then he would select the forces of the Allied forces and confer titles one by one to appease them and divide the Allied forces from the inside. Now that the former emperor has passed away, Prince Changsho's wishful thinking has failed. He can only proclaim himself as the emperor and confer titles to the Allied forces in the name of the emperor. My lord also knows that there are many disagreements within the Allied forces. Many of them are despicable. Perhaps he can really rope them in. Yang Si nodded in agreement. He said, however, Prince Changsho's move is beneficial to my lord. Jiang Pengji had fought for the position of Wanzhou magistrate for herself and even planned to reveal her identity as a woman. The chances of the imperial court agreeing to it were 50-50. However, with Prince Changsho's incident, the imperial court had no choice but to agree. They could only pinch their noses and confer the title of Wanzhou magistrate on a woman. Why? Because if the imperial court offended Jiang Pengji, wouldn't they be worried that Prince Changsho would take advantage of the situation and poach the Lu family? The Meng family had defected, and the imperial city of Qinzhou was about to be plundered. If the Lu family came along, the imperial court of Dongqing would not be able to withstand the turmoil. Even if they knew that the Lu family and the Meng family on Prince Changsho's side were despicable, there were no eternal enemies in the world, only eternal interests. As long as interests existed, there were many examples of people turning weapons of war into gifts of jade and silk. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, I know this principle. The results of the competition to become the next emperor were out. The winner was the crown princess's eldest legitimate son and the former emperor's eldest legitimate grandson. Hearing this news, the county chief of Shanghai County, Wu Mashang's face was as black as a coffin, gloomy and gloomy. He had been bouncing around for the past few days, trying to rope in allies. How could he have known that these people would act friendly on the surface, but stab him in the back? Wu Mashang had thought that the next emperor would be him, but in the end, it still fell to an 11-year-old kid. No matter how angry he was, the result could not be changed. Even if Wu Mashang wanted to imitate Prince Changsho and rebel, there were still troops from the alliance stationed outside the city. He had no chance of winning. After the funeral of the 7th emperor, the young emperor's coronation ceremony followed. The young emperor was only 11 years old. His body was thin and weak, and his eyes were filled with fear of strangers. He looked at them timidly. Although it was a coronation ceremony, it was far less luxurious than the previous emperor's funeral. In fact, it seemed rushed and simple. The emperor wore an ill-fitting ceremonial robe and a crown on his head. His footsteps were unsteady as he held the Empress Dowager's hand and walked to the dragon throne. Jiang Pengji glanced at the bullet screen in the live stream room. She felt that one of the viewers made a lot of sense. Nie Bailing, sigh, the mother is strong and the son is weak. It looks like the Empress Dowager's coronation ceremony, and the young emperor has become a foil. The Empress Dowager presides from behind the curtain, and the young emperor is just a decoration. After the coronation, the next step was the most anticipated reward of the alliance's feudal lords. Although they did not contribute much, they were still part of the alliance. The others got the meat, so why couldn't they get the soup? Chapter 746. After counting the 3 biggest contributors, it was time to count the vassals who had performed well in the Battle of Jiamen Pass. Don't look down on the alliance army that came to rescue the king. There were still people who were better than them. Huang Song and Enchui's performances were very eye-catching. Under the scheming of Cheng Jing, Feng Zhu, and the others, Huang Song's performance was remarkable, especially when the others were slacking off, which made him stand out even more. The other person was Enchui. Compared to Huang Song's opportunistic methods, Enchui relied on solid military achievements and hard work. Jiang Pengji had given him 10% of her men, but they had lost a third of them in the battle at Jiamen Pass. It was the biggest casualty among the feudal lords, and it could be said that they had suffered a great loss. Under such circumstances, Enchui was not looked down upon. Instead, he was valued by many forces. Why? This was because the few sworn brothers that Enchui had brought with him from the Red Lotus group were too powerful. Each of them was more valiant and skilled in battle than the last. They were incomparably ferocious on the battlefield, as if they did not care about their own lives. Thanks to these brothers, Enchui could be considered a hot little black horse in the alliance army. Of course, such a dark horse was insignificant to the imperial court. As one of the more prominent forces in the alliance, the Enchui's influence and connections in the court were too weak. Almost half of their contributions were secretly deducted. As for Huang Song, he had his grandfather, Secretary Huang, to protect him. Under the old man's management, he was able to preserve his contribution. Even though he was furious, as a noble scholar of the Nanshan Kingdom, Enchui knew all too well about the politics of officialdom. The situation was beyond his control. He had to swallow his anger, even if he didn't want to. Therefore, Enchui's reward was far less generous than Huang Song's. It was more like a consolation prize. Huang Song had already been promoted to the county governor of Maota County in Haozhou before the rescue of the emperor. It was not suitable for him to be promoted again, so the imperial court gave him a high official position as a reward. In addition, they also subsidized him with a lot of slaves and rice. Huang Song knew when to stop and did not say anything else. The other feudal vassals had also reaped some rewards, so their trip to rescue the king was not in vain. The awards were varied, but Jiang Pengji's was the only one that attracted the most attention. Governor of Wanzhou, becoming the Wanzhou governor in one fell swoop. TSK. This is unprecedented. An official dressed in court attire held the ceremonial tablet in his hand. He looked serious and focused, but in fact, he was whispering to the official beside him. I heard that this Liu Shi was just a small county magistrate in a remote village. He was in charge of small matters. Now that we've hit the jackpot, we've received an even more generous title than the other forces. We've been given the title of Wanzhou's prefecture governor right off the bat. It is indeed rare. Youngsters nowadays are incredible. Rather than saying that the young are incredible, it's better to say that the young man's father is incredible. Although everyone was envious of other people's rewards, they could accept it. When it was Jiang Pengji's turn, many people expressed that it was somewhat ridiculous. In an instant, jealousy filled the air. Even if Lu Shi's father was Lu Shi, it was still too much for a small county magistrate in a remote and desolate place to become the governor of Wanzhou. Of course, most of those who complained were short-sighted and ignorant of the situation in the court. Was it a huge leap from county magistrate to province magistrate? It was indeed huge. However, Jiang Pengji's title was the heaviest. All the feudal princes who came to rescue the emperor wanted to beat her up with a wooden bat. On the surface, Jiang Pengji's title was indeed very generous, but in terms of actual weight, it was almost the lowest in the alliance. Governor of Wanzhou. Before she came to rescue the emperor, she had already unified Wanzhou. Fengyi County, Chengde County, and Shanyang County were all in her hands. Even if the court dared to send a governor to take over, they would have to ask the local tyrant if he was willing to give up Wanzhou. Lu Shi was not a governor, but he was more like a governor. Giving Lu Shi the title of governor was just a way to make the title of Wanzhou's governor completely legitimate. In times of peace, the court had the final say in whether or not the title of Wanzhou's governor was given. In the current situation, the court had no say in whether or not the title of Wanzhou's governor was given. Even so, there were still people who disliked Jiang Pengji. The anger, jealousy, resentment, and malice in their eyes were almost overflowing. Jiang Pengji faced it calmly. It was just a small battle. The more jealousy and envy she could endure, the more glory she could endure in the future. Listening to the unfamiliar attendant read the imperial edict, Jiang Pengji seemed to be serious, but she was actually distracted. She secretly paid attention to the owners of those malicious gazes. After reading the long and awkward edict, she received it with both hands. She was about to express her gratitude when the owner of one of the gazes could not bear it any longer. "Wait, your subject has something to report." Lu Shi, Huang Song, and In Chui all frowned. The other feudal lords also looked at the person who had spoken in surprise, the chief of Shanghai County, Wuma Shang. Jiang Pengji sneered. "No matter what important matter Chief Wuma has, it should wait until I thank the emperor." "Could it be that you're doing this on purpose?" Wuma Shang stepped out from the crowd of officials. Holding the ceremonial tablet, he bowed deeply to the young emperor on the throne. After that, he said to Jiang Pengji, "Unfortunately, I did it on purpose." Jiang Pengji's expression was calm. She was not surprised that Wuma Shang had interrupted her. The other officials all looked at Wuma Shang in shock. Had the chief of Shanghai County been kicked in the head by a donkey? Why did he suddenly go crazy? "Your Majesty, your subject really does not wish for your Majesty to be deceived by such a vile person. This person may have done a great service, but he has also committed the crime of deceiving the emperor. How can he become the governor of a prefecture if his contributions do not make up for his crimes?" Wuma Yu knelt on the ground with a sincere expression, as if he was a loyal subject. It was impossible to tell that he had secretly cursed the emperor last night. "For the sake of enforcing the law and enforcing the law, I implore your Majesty to severely punish the guilty subject as a warning to others." The audience in the streaming room had been happily waiting for Jiang Pengji to be promoted. The sudden appearance of a clown instantly caused an uproar. "I have heard of it. Mother Kerr, where did this idiot come from?" Shanggu very softly Meng. "I'm so angry. Where did this drama queen come from? I'll kill him with one slap." Xin Chao Chinfen. I'm a little stunned. The host's gender has never been revealed. Strictly speaking, it is indeed a crime of deceiving the emperor. Never owe it. What crime of deceiving the emperor? If these idiots can touch a single hair on the host's head, I'll eat my keyboard on livestream. Jiang Pengji sneered, not even bothering to spare them a glance. Huang Song stepped out to speak for her. There was a hint of anger on his face. The Minister General is loyal to the court. He traveled thousands of miles just to save the emperor. Such loyalty can be seen by the heavens, the sun, and the moon. How did he become a sinful subject who deceives the emperor in the mouth of the chief? The minister general is a good subject, a pillar of the country. Chief Wuma, you have no evidence. Don't slander me with empty words. And Chui also wanted to speak up for him, but he looked at Lu Shi and held back. Her own father was not worried, so why should he, an outsider, be? Wuma Shang sneered. Evidence? Of course I have evidence. You only need this person to strip naked in the palace hall. Everyone was confused, but Lu Shi and Jiang Pengji remained unmoved. Chapter 747. Even though the person sitting on the throne was the young emperor, other than a few old officials, no one cared about him. But no matter what, the emperor was still the emperor, and the court meeting was still a court meeting. Not to mention exposing one's body. Even if one's clothes were disheveled, it was enough to be charged with disrespect. A lighter punishment would be the loss of one's reputation, and a more serious punishment would be the loss of one's head. If someone took the matter to the extreme and refused to let it go, that would be great. It might even implicate the entire family. Was Prince Changsho under a spell? Why did he suddenly ask others to expose their bodies in front of so many people? Huang Song wasn't the only one who thought this. The other officials were even more confused. Even though Wu Ma Shang had a bad temper, he wasn't such a rude person, let alone asking someone to be naked in court. Wu Ma Shang ignored Huang Song and said, "Since this person isn't willing, I can't force him. Lu Shi has a guilty conscience, so he's not willing to cooperate with me and expose his body. But don't think that you can get away with deceiving the emperor like this. Your Majesty, I have a witness who can definitely prove that Lu Shi is a deceiver and deceiver. He can't be the governor of Wanzhou. Your Majesty, please summon this person." The young emperor was at a loss. He turned to look at the Empress Dowager behind him. He had no idea what was going on. He liked to rely on his mother whenever he encountered something, and this was no exception. Separated by a thin layer of silk, he could vaguely see the Empress Dowager nodding slightly. The young emperor calmed down a little and said shyly, "If that's the case, why don't we summon a witness for questioning? What do you think, my dear officials?" "Your Majesty, the court meeting is an important place to discuss state affairs. How could just anyone step foot in there?" Huang Song frowned and said disapprovingly, "In my opinion, Chief Wuma doesn't need a witness. He just needs a bowl of soup to sober him up. One bowl was enough to make him sober up and stop babbling nonsense. How can he be so impudent and rude in such a solemn place like the court meeting?" Wu Ma Shang sneered as well. His eyes wandered between Huang Song and Jiang Pengji. He said something shocking. "I see. Chief Huang is so protective of Lu Shi because he's her little lover." As soon as he said that, not only did Huang Song burst into an uproar, but the officials were also discussing it animatedly and whispering to each other. As spectators, they felt that today's court session was exceptionally different. They had heard a lot of explosive gossip. Nowadays, men were very popular. Among the officials, there were also brothers who had a close relationship with each other. They were like best friends or a loving husband and wife. However, their relationship would not be out in the open. That was because, although it was an elegant thing to do in the end, it still went against the rules of yin and yang. Even though it was an elegant affair, very few people would make their brotherhood known to the public. The bystanders were watching the show, but Huang Song was frightened. He said with a hint of anger, "I'm not like County Chief Wu Ma, who has no scruples. Don't slander me when it comes to men." After he finished speaking, Huang Song secretly gave Jiang Pengji a look, indicating for her to clarify as well. Otherwise, if they were caught in a bucket of sh*t, what would happen to their reputations? Thinking of the main wife in the Fu, Huang Song felt his legs go weak. If the wife found out about this rumor, Huang Song felt that once he returned home, what awaited him would be his wife's wooden club. However, no matter how Huang Song winked at her, Jiang Pengji ignored him. As the person involved, she calmly looked down and did not utter a word, as if what happened in the court session had nothing to do with her. What was even more intriguing was that Lu Shi as the father of the person involved, had an equally cold attitude. Both of them had an attitude of, it's none of our business. Instead, Huang Song and Wu Ma Xian were the ones arguing. Wu Ma Xian snorted coldly and said, trying to cover up makes it even more obvious. Verbal arguments were not Huang Song's forte. If he met a scoundrel, he would only hit him when he was angry. However, if he rolled up his sleeves and hit someone in the court session, it would be a crime as serious as not dressing properly. He could only restrain himself. Wu Ma Xian, who thought he had the upper hand, looked down at Jiang Pengji with the attitude of a victor. Your Majesty, if we let a deceiver get away with it, it will definitely cause unrest in the country and make the people uneasy. I ask for your Majesty's permission to summon witnesses and expose Lu Shi's true colors. Wu Ma Shang was unwilling to let go of this point, making everyone angry and anxious. Jiang Pengji smiled coldly as she watched the drama unfold. The audience in the streaming room had already tortured Wu Ma Shang with 10 tortures. The young emperor had no opinion of his own and could only turn his head to look at his mother again. The Empress Dowager, who was listening from behind the curtains, nodded at the young emperor again. The young emperor thought about it and still agreed. Goo 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 goo, what the heck? The previous crown princess was too heartless. Not long ago, she even offered herself to the streamer, touched the streamer's hand, and wanted her to rub her breasts. Now she's turning her back on her. Anyone with eyes would know that Wu Ma Shang must have some unfavorable evidence against the streamer for making trouble at this time. The Empress Dowager should have rejected the witnesses and stalled for time. Why did she allow it? Gij goo goo. Puffed. Previous poster, you're too straightforward. Those who don't know better would think that the streaming room is dirty. Actually, isn't it normal for the Empress Dowager to hate the streamer? She roped in the streamer just to get the support of the streamer and her father to elevate the position of mother and son. Now that the situation has been settled, the Empress Dowager doesn't need the support of the streamer and her father anymore. Isn't it normal to dump her after using her? Let me add another point. The streamer didn't satisfy the desires of this old woman that day. She just watched as she was tortured by the aphrodisiac for 2 hours. If it were me, I might hold a grudge and cause trouble for the streamer or something. Jiang Pengji glanced at the bullet screen of the streaming room. The discussions were very lively. However, the reasons they mentioned were all secondary. Although the Empress Dowager was short-sighted, she wasn't stupid. She wouldn't be so stupid as to turn against Jiang Pengji over a little humiliation, unless she had already found a more reliable backer. With this layer of protection, the Empress Dowager could easily turn against her. Reality proved that Jiang Pengji's guess was correct. Wu Ma Shang had thought that the throne was in the bag, but the final result was a harsh slap to his face. However, this person was ambitious. He wasn't someone who would give up easily. The Empress Dowager had entered his hunting range. As long as he completely controlled the Empress Dowager, it would be the same as controlling the young emperor. At that time, Wu Ma Shang wouldn't be the emperor, but he would be more like the emperor. On the other hand, the Empress Dowager wanted to find a reliable partner to work with. She hoped that she would have a partner to stabilize the position of the emperor and his mother. Therefore, the two of them hit it off. The Empress Dowager needed Wu Ma Shang's real power, and Wu Ma Shang wanted to use the Empress Dowager to control the emperor. The two of them had their own plans and took what they needed. Therefore, it wasn't unreasonable for the Empress Dowager to cooperate with Wu Ma Shang to embarrass Jiang Pengji in the court. However, the level was still a little low. Jiang Pengji finally spoke. She smiled and said, "Your subject has no objections. Let's do as the county chief said and summon the witness." Chapter 748. Jiang Pengji laughed coldly and asked, "Why is the chief's expression so strange? Could the witness you speak of not exist?" After a moment, Wu Ma Shang's dull eyes regained their luster. "Don't be so arrogant. Let's see how you argue when the witness testifies. Deceiving the emperor is a capital offense. I advise you to think of a way out first." At that moment, not only was Jiang Pengji laughing coldly, but the other officials were also laughing in their hearts. When they heard that Jiang Pengji had become a governor, They were indeed a little jealous, but they did not dare to say anything. Not to mention deceiving the emperor, with the Lu father and son's current power. Even if they were to enter the palace with swords, for the sake of the bigger picture, the entire court would still not dare to say anything. At most, they would just roll their eyes at them, not to mention taking Jiang Pengji's life. Wu Ma Shang's words were simply laughable. Deceiving the emperor was indeed a serious offense, but it was not worth mentioning at certain times. Everyone was waiting for a good show. They did not care that it was a court meeting. After a while, an old woman knelt at the entrance of the hall. She was dressed in linen and had a face full of hardships. Although she was an ordinary-looking old woman, she was quite calm in front of the court officials and the emperor sitting at the head of the table. The woman knelt down and greeted with an old voice. "Your servant, Zhao Jia, greets the emperor." Jiang Pengji looked at the woman and could not help but laugh. "Chief Wu Ma, is this your so-called witness? You're making me laugh." Wu Ma Shang pointed at Jiang Pengji and Lu Shi and asked the old woman, "Are you sure this father and son pair are the masters you once served?" The old woman raised her head slightly and glanced at the two. She said in a low voice, "Yes, they're the old master and the eldest wife." The officials were confused. Huang Song looked like he was asking, "Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing?" A confused expression. The old woman spoke the official language very well. She spoke clearly and enunciated every word. Everyone could understand every single word of what she said, but they couldn't understand it when it was put together. Huang Song was stunned. He regained his lost self and tried to correct the old woman's mistake. That's wrong. It is clearly the old master and the second Lang Jun, the old woman said confidently. The old woman said with certainty, "That's right. Although I'm old, my memory is still good. This is clearly a pretty girl." Huang Song was silent. He thought to himself, the old woman in front of him might have a good memory, but she was definitely blind. How could a living, handsome man think of her as a pretty lady? How blind must one be to say such absurd words? After the old woman replied, she lowered her head again. Wu Ma Shang snorted proudly. "Lu Zhongqing, do you dare to admit that Zhao Jia was once a servant in your residence?" Lu Shi laughed and said, "I'm a man. The chores in the inner courtyard have always been handled by the women in the inner courtyard. How would I know?" Wu Ma Shang snorted, avoiding the important and focusing on the trivial. "You have no choice but to admit it. This Zhao Jia is obviously a servant brought along by your first wife, Gu Min, in her dowry. Not long after you lost your wife, you personally released a group of servants. Do you dare to say that you don't know them?" After hearing this, Lu, she said carelessly, "That was more than 10 years ago. I'm not like Chief Wu Ma, who can remember the affairs of other people's courtyards so clearly. If you say that this Zhao Jia was the wife servant, then that's fine. I have no objections." When the others heard this, they felt that Lu Shi's attitude was a bit strange. Others were obviously attacking Lu Shi's son, but not only did Lu Shi not defend him, he even hit him when he was down. Before they could figure it out, Jiang Pengji, the person involved, seemed to have dug a hole for herself. "Father, I heard from my stepmother a long time ago that there was indeed a Zhao Jia among the old people by my mother's side. Perhaps it's her." Lu Shi glanced at the old woman and casually said, "Oh." At that moment, everyone could see that this father and son pair did not take this matter to heart. They were purposely making fun of others. The old woman knelt on the ground and secretly clenched her fists. Her voice was hoarse. "This servant is indeed the late wife's servant. Back then, she lost 2 sons, and her body was extremely weak. Not long after, she passed away, leaving behind the old man and the eldest wife." Wu Ma Shang asked the old woman, "Are you sure that this Lu Shi in front of you is that eldest wife?" The old woman nodded with certainty and said, "This servant can confirm that the eldest wife's eyebrows, nose, and chin are very similar to the late wife's. Back then, the late wife especially doted on the only 4-year-old second Lang Jun, but because the servants did not take good care of him, he accidentally drowned. In order to appease the late wife's pain, the old man lied and said that the one who drowned was the eldest wife and had the eldest wife take the name of second Lang Jun. Lucy laughed coldly after hearing this. To me and the late wife, every child is our flesh and blood. There's no such thing as the palm of the hand or the back of the hand. Because of such a ridiculous reason, a daughter took the place of a son and let a daughter live under the shadow of a son. What a waste of being a father and a waste of being a mother. Wu Ma Shang immediately seized on his words and questioned, "So you're saying that you deny the truth?" But Lu Shi said, "I'm just denying that ridiculous reason." In other words, other than the reason, Lu Shi did not refute the other facts. Admitting it so easily, Wu Ma Shang felt as if his fist had punched cotton. It was very uncomfortable. Now, it was Jiang Pengji's turn to add insult to injury. She looked at Wu Ma Shang as if he was an idiot and asked him, "Chief Wu Ma, you mobilized so many people just for this?" Wu Ma Shang and the old woman's expressions synchronized as if they were both stunned. Jiang Pengji continued, "Actually, we are quite grateful to Chief Wu Ma for this. Because even if you didn't say it, my father and I had planned to tell the truth to His Majesty and the Empress Dowager after the court session. It's just that we were the ones in the wrong and lied to them first, so we didn't know how to bring it up. Chief Wu Ma is very understanding and has actually helped us a lot, saving us a lot of trouble." Wu Ma Shang's expression froze, and the old woman also looked at a loss. After a while, Wu Ma Shang said, "You're quite the schemer. Don't think that you can lessen the crime of lying to the emperor by saying this in hindsight. If I don't expose you, who can guarantee that you and your father will voluntarily confess after the court session and not continue to deceive the world?" Jiang Pengji asked him with a troubled look. "This is just a small matter, so why is Chief Wu Ma so persistent? If the crime of lying to the emperor is a small matter in your eyes, then what is a big matter?" Wu Ma Shang scolded her sternly, then knelt before the young emperor and said passionately, "Your Majesty, if we don't punish such a sinner, we won't be able to intimidate the others. If we don't punish this person severely from now on, everyone will think that lying to the emperor is a small matter. What will become of your Majesty's dignity? What will become of the royal family's dignity?" Jiang Pengji snorted. Her disdainful sneer was especially clear in the hall. Wu Ma Shang's face was ashen, and his eyes were as wide as bells. He looked at Jiang Pengji with a murderous look. Chapter 749. Go ahead and ask. I would like to see if you can distort the truth in front of everyone. If that's the case, then Chief Wu Ma, listen carefully. Jiang Pengji smiled nonchalantly. First question, who is Lu Shi? That's your twin brother. You took over your brother's identity. Wu Ma Shang spoke without hesitation. Jiang Pengji's expression was calm as she replied readily, That's wrong. I am Lu Shi, and Lu Shi is me. Who said that a twin sister can't use her deceased brother's name to comfort her parents who lost their beloved son? This is filial piety. I don't think it's wrong." Wu Ma Shang's eyes widened. He almost choked on her words. Seeing his expression, the other officials were happy to watch the show. The viewers in the streaming room were cheering for Jiang Pengji. Yin Rian, high energy, alert ahead. Non-combatants, retreat immediately. The streamer is about to charge for a big move. Drifting with the tide, little ding ding. What? 120. There's a critically injured patient here. I've booked an ambulance. Gufeng EC Yuan. The streamer has charged up to 100%. I have a feeling that it's going to be a terrifying battlefield. Wu Yi Sheng Sheng. Isn't it good to be alive? Why did you have to provoke my husband? Look at him now, he's about to die. Sophistry. Wu Ma Shang's expression darkened. He didn't know how to retort. Jiang Pengji smiled as she asked her second question. She was even more cunning, and the officials held back their laughter. Second question. Chief Wu Ma, listen carefully. Do you think that those who wear men's clothes are all men, and those who wear women's clothes are all women is correct? Wu Ma Shang opened his mouth. He didn't know if he should answer right or wrong, because no matter how he answered, Jiang Pengji had a bunch of questions waiting for him. If he answered that it was correct, he would be lying through his teeth. How could the gender of a man and a woman be determined by a piece of clothing? If a man wore women's clothes, he would still be a man. His body would not turn into a woman. Similarly, If a woman wore men's clothes, she would still be a woman. She would not turn into a man. If Wuma Shang answered wrong, he would be jumping into Jiang Pengji's trap and slapping himself in the face. He said sullenly, "Of course that's wrong." Jiang Pengji laughed. "That's right. That's wrong. Similarly, I, Lu Shi, am a woman. It's just that I love dressing up as a man. The world thinks I'm a man just because I'm wearing men's clothes. Is this also my fault? I, Lu Shi, have never used makeup to hide my appearance. I've always been barefaced. Outsiders have mistaken me for a man. Do you expect me to tell everyone I meet that I'm a woman?" What he meant was, how could he blame others for his own blindness? Wu Ma was so angry that his face turned red. He pointed at her and said, "Ignorant child, this is clearly quibbling. If you had no intention of hiding it, why did you say that you would confess to His Majesty and Empress Dowager after the court session? It's clearly intentional. It's simply an act of deceiving the emperor." "You're wrong," Jiang Pengji said strangely. "Everyone thinks that Lu Shi is a man, including His Majesty and the Empress Dowager. I didn't sincerely hide it, but I also didn't explain it in time. I also didn't tell everyone I met that I was a woman. That's why I admitted that I was deceiving them. I'm just saying this to give the prefectural governor a way out of this embarrassing situation. I never expected the county governor to be so overbearing." After being tricked by Jiang Pengji again and again, Wu Ma Shang's rage had reached its peak. No matter how much you quibble, you still can't hide the fact that you tried to disguise your gender to take over as Wanzhou's governor. I understand now. Chief Wu Ma is holding on to this matter because she thinks that I, a woman, shouldn't take over as Wanzhou's magistrate. Wu Ma Xing laughed sinisterly. You concealed your gender with the intention of taking over as Wanzhou's governor. You have committed a great crime of deceiving the emperor. What else do you have to say? Jiang Pengji coldly glanced at Wu Ma Shang. I thought that the real crime of deceiving the ruler would be when someone else pretended to be Lu Shi and took over as Wanzhou's magistrate. I never thought that your so-called crime of deceiving the ruler would be when a woman concealed her gender and took over as Wanzhou's magistrate. Lu Shi is still Lu Shi. He's the real Lu Shi, not an outsider pretending to be him. Why can't he take over as Wanzhou's magistrate? Jiang Pengji sneered. Why don't you say that the county chief thinks that women are not qualified to be Wanzhou's magistrate? Wu Ma Shang asked in return. Did I say anything wrong? Of course it's wrong. It's the funniest mistake in the world. Jiang Pengji's voice suddenly became loud and clear. She pointed the ceremonial tablet in her hand at Wu Ma Shang's nose and said forcefully, "If you say that women are not qualified to be Wanzhou's magistrate, may I ask whether the Marquis of Guanyi, Su Gong, is a man or a woman?" Jiang Pengji's words directly dragged the Su brothers, Su Bei and Su Fei, into the water. They were the descendants of Su Gong. The Su brothers, who had originally thought that they were spectators, looked at each other, then turned their faces away in disgust. Without waiting for Wu Ma Shang's reply, Su Bei stepped forward and answered, "Naturally, Su Gong is a woman." Wu Ma Shang's face twitched. He secretly clenched his fists in his sleeves. He looked at Jiang Pengji with a gaze filled with intense hatred. Naturally, Su Gong is a woman. Moreover, she is a heroine who does not lose to men. Jiang Pengji smiled and cupped her hands in greeting to Su Bei. Su Bei also returned Jiang Pengji's greeting in a daze. He was still in a daze. How did the promised younger brother turn into a younger sister? The face was still the same face, the body was still the same body, but the gender had been reversed. Jiang Pengji pressed on. I, Lu Shi, do not dare to be arrogant and say that I have surpassed my predecessors, but ever since I was young, I have admired Su Gong. I have secretly regarded her as my role model. My dynasty is the legitimate descendant of the Xia dynasty. Naturally, we have to follow the previous dynasty and restore our former glory. I have one last question. Listen carefully, Chief Wu Ma. Now, do you still think that Lu Shi as a woman is wrong to take over the position of Wanzhou's magistrate? Wu Ma Shang was about to say that Jiang Pengji was arrogant. How could she compare to Su Gong? Jiang Pengji had already gained the upper hand with her words. Could it be that Chief Wuma also agrees with the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women that the people of Zhongzhou worship and regard as the standard? That women should obey the 3 virtues and 4 virtues? That women like Su Gong are women who do not abide by the ways of women? That they should be stripped of their titles and nailed to the pillar of shame? I heard that when the 4 self-accomplishment classics for women was popular in Zhongzhou, many learned scholars even wrote books to condemn Su Gong and other female heroes. Chief Wuma, do you agree? Jiang Pengji asked aggressively. You only need to answer yes or no. Wuma Shang's face was deathly pale. He could hear countless voices buzzing in his ears. His palms were covered in sticky cold sweat. He stammered, You're twisting words and forcing logic. This kind of woman who does not abide by the ways of women. Enough. A stern rebuke forcefully interrupted Wuma Shang's words. An ivory baton was swung across his face, almost knocking him out. Su Bei's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He asked sternly, Wuma, you old fool, who are you calling unruly? Su Fei's temper was not as good as Su Bei's. Chapter 750. That definitely could not tolerate this. The Su family's current prosperity was all due to their ancestors and the generations of descendants. Even the current emperor, let alone Wuma Shang, would remember humiliating their ancestors and settle the score in the future. Su Bei said, Old man Wuma, and Su Fei quickly followed up with another clean blow. The ceremonial tablet in his hand smashed heavily into Wuma Shang's face. In just a few breaths' time, a slightly swollen red mark appeared on his face. The imperial court assembly froze for a moment. Everyone's attention was on the Su brothers and Wuma Shang, but Jiang Pengji's gaze was fixed on Zhao Jia. She discovered a very interesting detail. When Su Fei threw the ceremonial baton at Wuma Shang, the latter did not dodge in time and was hit squarely by the ivory baton. At the same time, Zhao Jia, who had been kneeling on the ground, subconsciously moved and secretly raised her hand to cover her face. Jiang Pengji curled her lips and smiled. She looked at Zhao Jia with interest. Seeing that the situation was about to get out of control and that the Su brothers were about to gang up on Wuma Shang, the officials close to Wuma Shang stepped out to mediate. Please calm down. Chief Wuma is not targeting Su Gong. He's only targeting Lu Shi. Su Bei's gaze was cold. He waved his sleeves and snorted, obviously not taking this mediator seriously. Where did this drama queen come from? How dare she add scenes for herself? Su Fei's temper was violent, and he always did things willfully. He did not care about personal feelings or face. Are you deaf, or did your mind wander? This old man opened his mouth and said this unruly woman. Not only was he targeting Lu Shi, but he also included Su Gong and the other female martyrs. If I could tolerate such insults, I would be a disgrace to the Su family. Old man, listen carefully. If you don't give me an explanation today, don't even think about leaving this palace. The officials' expressions changed when they heard this. Wuma Shang seemed to be stunned by Su Fei's words. It took him a while to recover. He was trying to incite the Su brothers to rebel. I thought the descendants of the Su family were powerful, but they're just 2 kids being used as weapons. This is clearly Lu Shi's scheme. He's trying to fish in troubled waters. Su Gong is a woman worthy of respect. How can ordinary women compare to her? Lu Shi is such a despicable person, twisting the truth and causing conflict between you and me. He is truly despicable. Hearing this, the Su brothers did not calm down. Instead, they both snorted and looked at Wuma Shang with disdain. Was there a need for Wuma Shang to explain? Even a blind man could tell that the 2 brothers had been implicated. At the end of the day, if Wuma Shang had not come looking for trouble, would the 2 brothers have been implicated? Old man, don't try and change the topic. Wuma Shang snorted coldly. Wuma Shang snorted heavily, his gaze cold. Master Su and Lu Shi are 2 separate matters. The 2 Langjuns of the Su family should not interfere with Lu Shi's matters. Once this official exposes the crime of deceiving the monarch, I will personally visit the two of you to explain and beg for forgiveness. How about that? Su Pei didn't know what to say. Jiang Pingji had dragged them into the water to attract and divert Wu Ma Shang's attention. If they just left like that, it wouldn't be very loyal. Su Bei wanted to say no. Jiang Pingji had dragged them into the water to divert Wu Ma Shang's attention. If they just left like that, it would be dishonorable. Su Bei's little scheme wasn't bad. Unfortunately, the two brothers' brainwaves were not on the same channel. Su Fei, who had zero tacit understanding, had ruined his plan. I want to see what kind of ivory you can spit out from your dog mouth. I want to see what kind of ivory you can spit out from that dog mouth of yours. Stupid pig cousin, ah? Su Bei's expression did not change, but he was already cursing Su Fei in his heart. Not only did Su Bei think that the younger brother was a scammer, but the viewers in the streaming room also thought that Su Fei was a scammer. Idao Hoang, damn. What is a pig teammate? Su Fei is a pig teammate. Midnight epilepsy. The host worked so hard to create an advantage, but it was all destroyed by that stupid pig Su Fei. Luochen Buzzishin. I take back what I said. How is Su Fei cute? He's just stupid. This was such a good opportunity. With such a powerful attacker like the host, even if the brothers did not say anything, they would still be able to get some kills in the end. Now, they were defeated by old Wu Ma with just a few words. If they did not team up to kill the old man, they would just be waiting to be killed. Little Penguin Meow Meow. To the previous poster, I don't agree with you. Our host battle power is over 10,000. She can carry the entire battle by herself. Without the help of the Su brothers, Jiang Pengji seemed to be in a disadvantageous position. Wu Ma Shang laughed coldly. As expected of Lu Zhongqing's son, your ability to twist words and force logic is not bad. Unfortunately, the eyes of the officials are sharp. No matter how much you try to clear your name, sophistry is still sophistry. Don't even think about using the ancestors as a shield. You're just a mere deceiver. How can you be mentioned in the same breath as so many heroes? Lu Shi, what else do you have to say? Unexpectedly, Jiang Pengji looked at the red marks on his face and sneered mockingly. Chief Wu Ma, do you know why the second son of the former emperor died? This question stunned not only Wu Ma Shang, but the other officials as well. How did the death of the second son of the former emperor have anything to do with the current situation? You're talking nonsense again. Wu Ma Shang furrowed his brows in disgust. Jiang Pengji said, "You're wrong. I'm not talking nonsense, and I'm definitely not talking nonsense. The second son of the former emperor was found to have used witchcraft to murder the former emperor and the demon empress. That's why he was killed. His mother's family was also implicated. I suspect that you've been bewitched by witchcraft." The officials were in an uproar. This development was a little scary. They felt like their brains were not enough to process it. Wu Ma Shang's face darkened, and he almost jumped up. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Chief Wu Ma, don't be in such a hurry to deny it. I dare to say this because I have evidence. Just like how Chief Wu Ma was able to find this Zhao Jia as a witness, I also have evidence. However, I'm not Chief Wu Ma. I won't ask you to strip naked in front of everyone. I just need you to do one thing according to my instructions. Jiang Pengji sneered. You and this old woman, one of you say green bamboo snake's mouth, wasp sting in Langya dialect. The other one says long live the emperor in Zhangzhou dialect. When she made this strange request, the officials were still confused. After a while, the old woman said it again in awkward Langya dialect, and Wu Ma Shang followed in Zhangzhou dialect. Jiang Pengji sneered. You seem to have misunderstood. I said it at the same time, not one after the other. Wu Ma Shang stepped forward and scolded. Bitch, don't go too far. Jiang Pengji's voice suddenly became loud, and she used some mental pressure. Are you not willing to say it, afraid to say it, or are you saying that you can't do it? Chapter 751. An official chimed in. Children do not speak of strange things. What kind of witchcraft is this? It's hilarious. Lu Shi, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke up. If the art of witchcraft is just a trick to make people laugh and is not worth mentioning, then the second prince of the late emperor tried to use witchcraft to murder the late emperor, but failed. He was killed. In your opinion, the late emperor killed his own son by mistake? The official who had voiced his support broke out in a cold sweat and retreated pathetically. Even though the late emperor's conduct was disdainful, in front of the young emperor, no one could accuse the late emperor of wrongdoing. Lu Shi continued, regardless of whether witchcraft exists or not, Lanting suspects that Chief Wu Ma was controlled by witchcraft. Why not just repeat what she said and say it at the same time? A simple sentence can break through Lanting's slander. Why not? What's there to talk about? Su Bei, who had missed a golden opportunity, also voiced his support. That's right. Chief Wu Ma and this old woman can just say it at the same time. If they can say it, then it's Lu Shi who is slandering you and the witchcraft is non-existent. If they can't say it, then it'll be interesting. At that moment, everyone's gazes were focused on Wu Ma Shang and the old woman. Their expressions stiffened. Under the watchful eyes of the public, they finally steeled their hearts and prepared to speak. But no matter what they said, one of them opened his mouth and the other closed it. They could not speak at the same time. It was very strange. At that moment, the officials who were originally just watching the show could not help but feel their hair stand on end. They secretly moved their seats back. They tried a few times, but they all failed. Their faces grew paler and paler. The officials felt their hair stand on end. The atmosphere in the court was developing in the direction of the supernatural. The audience in the streaming room was also shocked. They had imagined many scenarios, but none of them could guess the direction of the plot. Inshui Shan. Oh my god, this is too strange. I feel goosebumps all over my body. Ishio Xiniangxiang. That's strange. Why can't they speak at the same time? Bao Bai Yu Princess. Wait, let me think. Could it be that the two of them are actually being controlled by the same person? Jiang Pengji glanced at the streaming room and smiled to herself. Some people's guesses were very close to the truth, but not all of them were correct. Host V. Ever since they appeared, they haven't spoken at the same time. When one person's expression changed, the other person remained expressionless. Of course, this wasn't really evidence. The most obvious flaw was when Su Fei had hit Wu Ma Shang with the ceremonial tablet. Wu Ma Shang hadn't been able to react and had been hit, but the woman had instinctively dodged and covered her face with her hands. Of the two of them, one was standing and the other was kneeling. The ceremonial tablet flying towards Wu Ma Shang had no chance of hitting the woman. So what was she hiding from? Some of the audience understood Jiang Pengji's explanation, but others did not. Years flow like water. Let me make an analogy. You guys have played computer games before, right? If you were to open 2 accounts to do daily quests and encounter a red name, you would panic and want to switch to the DPS account to fight or switch to the healer account to save his life. However, switching pages required time, and if he was too flustered, he might even get the wrong account. It was impossible to use both accounts at the same time. I think I understand what the host is trying to say. Wu Ma Shang and that woman are actually one person controlling 2 accounts? With such an explanation, the slow-witted audience members finally understood. Some of them even found it funny. Sang Shue Shijian. Haha, I suddenly remembered the host's request. One person spoke in the Langi dialect, and the other spoke in the Zhangzhou dialect. This was no longer doing 2 things at the same time. It was clearly doing 4 things at the same time. There were very few people who could do 4 things at the same time. Obviously, the person in front of her couldn't do it. As the saying went, strike while you're down. Adhering to the principle of beating a drowning dog, Jiang Pengji ruthlessly stepped on it. Your Majesty, I still want to sue Wu Ma Shang for perjury. Jiang Pengji pointed at the woman, who had a pale expression on her face, and said, This person claims to be a servant of my deceased mother's dowry, so she should be used to doing rough work. Why are there no thick calluses on her hands, but instead they are as smooth as a baby's? When she said this, the woman subconsciously raised her hands and looked at them. Her palms were white. Not to mention thick calluses, there wasn't even a mark of labor. They were smooth and delicate. The officials were not blind. They noticed this after Jiang Pengji's reminder, and their hearts skipped a beat. This was an assassin? Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and accused them one by one. If it was just for me, why would Chief Wu Ma need to mobilize so many people and specially find someone to disguise as my deceased mother's dowry? Jiang Pengji accused in a stern voice. I'm afraid that this witchcraft was arranged by someone with ulterior motives to harm Your Majesty and assassinate the officials. The old woman was so angry that her whole body trembled. Her voice suddenly changed to the high-pitched voice of a young woman. Lu Shi, you be *TCH. No matter what she said, there were already important officials shouting for help, and the imperial guards outside rushed in. The entire court was in a mess. Seeing the imperial guards rush in, the old woman was furious. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, she flicked her 10 fingers, which were at least 3 inches long, with a swoosh. Her fingernails were extremely sharp, and they could directly tear a person into pieces. The young emperor had long since wet his pants in tears on the dragon throne. The Empress Dowager and a group of servant girls screamed in fear. Protect the emperor! Protect the emperor! There's an assassin! The court was in a mess. The old woman planned to take advantage of the chaos to break out of the encirclement, but from the corner of her eye, she saw Lu Shi, who had been sitting still like a mountain. She broke out of the encirclement in Lu Shi's direction. She couldn't kill Lu Shi, but she wanted to kill Lu Shi to vent her anger. However, before she could put this idea into action, her lower abdomen was hit by a huge force that was as heavy as a mountain. Her body was like a kite with a broken string. She flew backward for 2 or 3 feet. It's you again, be *TCH. The corner of the old woman's mouth was broken, and bright red blood flowed out. The officials nearby were so scared that they shrank to a corner of the court. Jiang Pengji stood not far from Lu Shi and sneered. Once you're new, twice you'll get used to it. This is already the 3rd time. At that moment, the old woman heard a warning from the system. Host, Lu Shi is not easy to deal with. Grab a hostage and escape quickly. The old woman was furious, but she also knew that Jiang Pengji was not easy to deal with. If she didn't want to die, she could only escape. She waved her hand in the air, pulled out an exquisite and gorgeous long sword, and directly attacked the person closest to her. Her target was Huang Song. She was about to get the hostage, but someone else moved faster than her. Jiang Pengji picked up an ivory baton that had been thrown on the ground. After predicting its trajectory, she threw it at the old woman. Under the infusion of power, the baton flew at the old woman's legs, waist, left chest, neck, and between the eyebrows with the force of a thunderbolt. Huang Song was already far away, but he didn't expect to be so unlucky. Facing the old woman who was attacking him, he had nowhere to hide. He could only watch as the silver nails rapidly grew larger in front of his eyes. Just when he thought he was going to die, the old woman's body exploded in front of his eyes. Chapter 752. Blood splattered on Huang Song's face, drenching him in a daze. For a moment, the court was silent, as if someone had pressed the pause button. The dismembered body fell to the ground with a dull thud. The thick blood spread out and wet the socks on Huang Song's feet. Protect! The eunuch serving the emperor shouted for help as he carried the young emperor, who had wet his pants, off the throne. He had wanted to send the emperor to a safe place, but he saw the scene when he retreated in a panic. The words he wanted to say were stuck in his throat, and he couldn't spit them out. The young emperor had witnessed the whole process. He was so scared that his tears had stopped flowing, and he couldn't stop trembling. Huang Song's face was sprayed with blood and brain matter. His court clothes were stained with flesh and organs. His eyes were wide open because of fear, as if his eyeballs were about to pop out of their sockets. Only when the imperial guards took down the muddle-headed chief of Shanghai County did his rapidly beating heart slowly return to a normal rhythm. In the eyes of outsiders, the old woman's fingernails had suddenly grown long, and she had torn several imperial guard alive with her bare hands. She looked like a demon. Such a powerful demon had been smashed into pieces by Jiang Pengji's 5 ivory batons. Then there was a problem. Wasn't Lu Shi more terrifying than a demon? Huang Song's psychological quality was still very high, but when he came to his senses, he found that his legs were sore and weak. With a plop, he knelt on the ground. Not far from him was the dismembered body of the old woman. One of her eyeballs was hanging out of her socket, and the other had rolled to the side of her head. One of the batons had been aimed at her waist, and her intestines had flowed out of the wound. Huang Song had seen such a bloody scene before, but the current scene was even more impactful. He couldn't hold it in for a moment. His stomach convulsed, acid gushed out, and the urge to vomit rushed to his head. Wretch! He raised his hand to cover his mouth, tilted his head, and vomited. At first, he could vomit the remains of his breakfast, but later, only acid was left. Not only was Huang Song in a sorry state, but the other officials and officials were also trembling with fear. They were so scared that they didn't dare to make a sound. Their faces were pale, and they were losing blood. They were afraid that if they breathed too loudly, they would attract the attention of the killer. In the entire court, only Jiang Pengji and Lu Shi were calm. "Your Majesty, I have killed the demon." Jiang Pengji looked calm and collected. She folded her sleeves slightly and bowed respectfully in the direction of the young emperor. Her voice was calm and clear, like a command. The time in court began to move again. The officials, who had been too frightened to move, also came back to their senses. One by one, they found that their inner robes were soaked in sticky sweat. Looking at their dumbfounded expressions, the viewers in the live stream expressed their disdain. All of them were high-ranking officials, yet they were scared **less by such a small battle. How embarrassing. Blood C. Liu Xiong. The voice of all the officials. Who am I? Where am I? What am I doing? Xiao Xiaonan. I'm scared to death. I've heard that there are super bloody scenes in this live broadcast room, but I didn't expect it to be so bloody. Diligent, lazy woman. I don't think this is bloody. At most, it's disgusting. The real bloody scene can only be seen when the host goes to the battlefield. That scene is magnificent and bloody. However, I felt sorry for Huang Song. This experience would leave a big shadow in his heart. If Huang Song has a conflict of interest with our anchor in the future, do you think he will back down before the fight even starts? Lao Ciji Lieming, I don't think so. There will be a shadow in his heart, but Huang Song is not a simple character. He has experienced much more horrifying and bloody scenes than this. Compared to this, I think the fact that the host is a woman will leave a bigger shadow in his heart. The viewers in the live stream room have been following the updates for a long time, so they were more or less mentally prepared. However, the officials and officials present were completely unprepared. First, the old woman turned into a monster, her 10 fingers spitting out 3 inches of silver white nails as she tore a living person apart with her bare hands. Then, Jiang Pengji used the ivory baton to smash the old woman into pieces. The entire process took less than 5 or 6 breaths, but they felt as if 10,000 years had passed in a blink of an eye. Who would have thought that the ivory baton that was usually used as a memo could be used as a hidden weapon to tear people to pieces? The young emperor was still hugging Huang Min's neck and wailing. Clear yellow urine dripped down the hem of his clothes. Jiang Pengji had no choice but to repeat it again. The atmosphere in the courtroom was at a standstill until the exasperated voice of Wu Ma Shang, the county chief of Shanghai, pulled them back to reality. How dare you? Who allowed you to treat me like this? Let me go. Wu Ma Shang felt dizzy, as if he was covered in a thick fog. He couldn't even see his own fingers. At some point, the fog dissipated and the clouds parted to reveal the sun. His vision and mind became clear again. He blinked his eyes in confusion and was shocked to find that his hands were tied behind his back. He was kneeling on the ground in a sorry state. At that moment, Wu Ma Shang, who had lived like a prince for a long time, couldn't hold it in anymore. He yelled at the guards. The bewildered and helpless officials immediately turned their attention to Wu Ma Shang. If it weren't for this guy, how could today's farce have happened? The Empress Dowager, who had been frightened to the point of losing all color, forced herself to calm down. She said angrily, "Guards, arrest the traitor Wu Ma Shang and await his punishment." Wu Ma Shang didn't understand the current situation. When he heard the Empress Dowager's words, the flames in his heart surged. In his memory, the two of them were just having a good time not long ago. They were so tired that they were sweating profusely. Now, in the blink of an eye, they had become merciless. Wait, Jiang Pengji stopped the guards from arresting Wu Ma Shang. Reporting to the Empress Dowager, Hu County Chief Wu Ma Shang must have fallen for a despicable trick. Today's incident wasn't his fault. If we arrest him without clarifying the situation, Chief Wu Ma is being wrongly accused. The Empress Dowager was secretly resentful. Her armor was deeply embedded in her flesh as she moved. Her full lips were bitten by her pearly white teeth. She would never forget the scene of her seducing Lu Shi. Now that she thought about it, she was angry, hateful, embarrassed, and annoyed. No matter how much she offered to sleep with him, this person remained indifferent. He could only watch as she, who was as beautiful as a flower and as beautiful as jade, was tortured by the secret fragrance. He thought it was Lu Xiaohui, but it turned out to be a fake Lang Jun. Wu Ma Shang was even more flustered. When he heard Jiang Pengji's words, he immediately climbed up the pole and shouted that he was innocent. Your subject just woke up in a daze. I don't know what happened. I'm being wrongly accused. Your Majesty and the Empress Dowager, please understand. Wu Ma Shang wasn't lying. Before he woke up, he clearly remembered that he and the Empress Dowager were having a good time together. He was so happy that he forgot everything else. That night, he slept very deeply. When he woke up, he found himself in the royal court, surrounded by the imperial guards. He was so scared that he didn't know how to react. Jiang Pengji's thin lips curled up slightly. Her eyes were filled with malice. She asked in a clear voice, Chief Wu Ma, have you forgotten what happened just now? Wu Ma Shang shook his head. He really didn't remember. Chapter 753. Just now? What happened? Wu Ma Shang's heart skipped a beat. He had a bad feeling about the petty tricks Jiang Pengji had mentioned. Just now, Chief Wu Ma brought a woman to the court and tried to expose my identity as a woman. He was determined to punish me for deceiving the emperor. Wu Ma Shang was dumbfounded. His shocked expression could not be faked. Wait, why did he understand every word Lu Shi said, but he couldn't understand them when they were put together? More importantly, Wu Ma Shang was dumbfounded. You're a woman? It felt as absurd as a 9-foot-tall, burly, bearded man calling himself a woman with a charming face. Jiang Pengji nodded. Yes, Chief Wu Ma kept talking about this and wanted to use it to punish me. Later, I noticed that Chief Wu Ma and the old woman had strange expressions. Only then did I realize that Chief Wu Ma had been harmed by a petty person's witchcraft. Wu Ma Shang's mind was muddled. He was indeed unhappy with Jiang Pengji, but there was nothing wrong with his brain. Look at the young emperor. What good could deceiving the emperor do? He cursed in his heart, but on the surface, he kept pleading innocence. He insisted that he had been bewitched by someone using witchcraft. No matter what, Wu Ma Shang was the chief of Shanghai County, an old fox who had been in the bureaucracy for many years. As long as he insisted that he was innocent and that he had been harmed by witchcraft, he could turn today's matter into a small one. No matter what, he was still one of the Alliance's 10,000 elite troops. The court could not use this excuse to kill him. There were many officials who were close to Wu Ma Shang, and they all stood up to speak for him. For a moment, the Empress Dowager was in a difficult position. With the help of the officials, Wu Ma Shang's panicked heart calmed down a lot. He calmed down and began to think about who was behind this. No matter how he thought about it, the Empress Dowager was the most suspicious. Why was he so suspicious? First, before he woke up, he had sex with the Empress Dowager. He had so much fun fighting with her that he was sweating all over. After venting, his guard was at its lowest. The Empress Dowager had the highest success rate. She could harm him without him knowing. Second, before the young emperor ascended the throne, he was the young emperor's biggest competitor. Would the Empress Dowager be willing to let a hidden threat like him live? No matter how he thought about it, the Empress Dowager was most likely to plot against him. If the plan succeeded, not only would they be able to take his head and power, but they would also be able to deal a heavy blow to the Liu family's father and son. Bah, the Liu family's father and daughter. Unfortunately, with the emperor's current prestige, not to mention the crime of deceiving the emperor. Even if he carried a sword into the palace, he would still be fine. Which idiot would think that the crime of deceiving the emperor would be enough to topple the Lu father and daughter? Which idiot? Thinking about this, Wu Mashang was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He had really suffered an undeserved calamity. It would have been fine if he could have used this opportunity to topple Lady Lu and her father. Unfortunately, it wasn't effective, and he was even dragged into this mess. The most important thing now was to rescue himself from the quagmire. He could think about the future later. Once he saved himself, he would find the Empress Dowager, that poisonous woman, to settle the score. Wu Mashang broke free from the Imperial Guard's restraints, straightened his messy clothes, and bowed to Jiang Pengji in apology. Just now, this official was careless and fell for a despicable person's trick. This is why I wrongly accused the Middle Chief General. Please forgive me, Middle Chief General. Wu Mashang's ability to say polite words was not weak. He said righteously, in this official's opinion, the Middle Chief General is a woman who is not inferior to a man. Regardless of whether she is a man or a woman, she is a good minister of the country. The crime of deceiving the emperor is even more unfounded. The despicable person behind this is truly despicable. This official will not forgive her. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, County Chief Wu Ma, you praise me too much. How can I be as good as the Middle Chief General? Wu Mashang waved his hand and smiled amiably. Don't be humble. In this official's opinion, having a daughter like this makes me envious of Lu Zhongqing's good fortune. If this official remembers correctly, I think it's time to call you the Middle Chief General instead of the Wanzhou Magistrate. You are so young, yet you are truly a heroine. Jiang Pengji said, Not yet. I was just about to thank you, but Chief Wu Ma interrupted me. But you can't blame the chief. If you want to blame someone, blame the despicable person behind this. To think that they would bring such an evil method, like witchcraft, into the court. Fortunately, they did not cause too much damage. This official is ashamed. Wu Mashang climbed up the ladder and used this opportunity to clean himself up. Jiang Pengji accepted the position of Wanzhou Magistrate as she had wished. The viewers in the streaming room were a little disappointed. They had thought that Jiang Pengji would use this opportunity to kill Wu Mashang as well. Jiang Pengji replied with one sentence. Host V. There's no rush. Wu Mashang has now targeted the Emperor and the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager went for wool and came home shorn. No matter what, Wu Mashang was still the chief of Shanghai County. He had tens of thousands of troops under his command. He could secretly torture the mother and son to death. Jiang Pengji kept Wu Mashang alive because she wanted to use him to keep the young emperor and the Empress Dowager in check. At the same time, she could make Wu Mashang owe her a favor. Wu Mashang did not participate in the sales of the flashing bricks. She could use this opportunity to sell them at a high price and extort money from him. At that moment, someone in the audience suddenly remembered something. Diligent, lazy woman. Oh, I suddenly thought of something. The little emperor is so weak now. Does the host want to try holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around? Just like Boss Chow, when his power reaches a certain stage, he can add 9-10 to himself. Then he can establish a country and proclaim himself emperor. Holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around? The viewers in the streaming room were as excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They all encouraged Jiang Pengji to give it a try. Of course, other than those who supported it, there were also many viewers who were not optimistic about the policy of holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around. Yinyuagia Zhuge Qinma. Boss Chow can hold the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around. He needs the right conditions to implement this policy. The Han royal family has indeed declined, but there are still many loyal Han officials who are not completely disappointed in the Han royal family. For example, Sun Lingjun, who worked under Boss Chow. He has been an official for more than 30 years and has been receiving Han salaries. He is still loyal to the Han royal family and not Boss Chow. In the end, they fell out because Boss Chow wanted to go solo. With such a loyal Han official, It indirectly shows that the Han royal family still has a certain amount of deterrence to the nobles around the world. That's why Boss Chow holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around would be effective. According to the Dongqing royal family, holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around would not work. What does holding the emperor hostage and ordering the nobles around mean? In layman's terms, it's using the name of the emperor to issue orders, gather power, and have a good reason for doing so. The world is now divided into 5 parts. The emperor of Dongqing is not the only emperor, so there is insufficient centralization of power. In addition, Dongqing has only been established for a short period of time. The successive emperors have worn away the feelings that the talented scholars of Dongqing have for the royal family. As a result, the scholars of the world are far from loyal to the emperor. Under such circumstances, how many people will still be loyal to the Dongqing royal family? It can't be said that there are none, but there are only a handful of them who will really take the young emperor's orders seriously. As for the advantage of having a good reason for doing so, it's even more useless. The host has a bad temper. She can hit whoever she wants. She can casually come up with a reason to do so. Chapter 754. She had a good reason to do so. Her will was the most reasonable reason. To Jiang Pingji, the strategy of holding the emperor hostage to command the nobles was of little value. Not only would holding the young emperor hostage not bring her any benefits, but it would also become a burden to her. Therefore, even when the audience in the streaming room urged her to try holding the emperor hostage to command the nobles, Jiang Pengji was indifferent. "Bogeo, are you all right?" Jiang Pengji extended her hand in front of Huang Song. He stretched out his hand in a daze. She pulled him up with all her might. "Thank you, Lanting." Huang Song let out a long sigh of relief. He was about to wipe his sweat when he realized that his sleeve was covered in blood. The urge to vomit that he had tried so hard to suppress surged up again. He hurriedly bowed in apology, turned around, and vomited again. This time, he didn't even have the stomach acid, only the unbearable retching. As for the fact that Jiang Pengji was a woman, Huang Song had completely forgotten about it. Or rather, he didn't have the energy to think about it. When the old woman had torn apart a few palace guards, Yang Jian had protected the young emperor with his own body. Now that he was safe, he rejoined the crowd of officials. "Lu Zhongqing, is that really your daughter?" Yang Jian was a military officer. His rank was not on the same level as Lu Shi's. Taking advantage of the chaos, he took the opportunity to approach Lu Shi and ask. Lu Shi smiled calmly, but the moment he opened his mouth, he choked. "If she's not my daughter, then is she yours?" Yang Jian almost lost his composure. "Who's arguing with you? I'm asking you a serious question." "Lanting is my daughter, of course. It's been hard on her to dress as a man all these years," Lu Shi said calmly. Yang Jian was speechless. His expression became very strange and awkward. Lu Shi asked him, "What? Your expression is so strange. Could it be that you've suffered at Lanting's hands and now feel defeated?" Yang Jian snorted, turned his head, and ignored Lu Shi. However, Lu Shi had indeed said what he was thinking. After losing to a young man, Yang Jian could still say that the new generation surpassed the old. He was old and not as good as the young. But now, he was told that the young man who had defeated him was a young girl. While Yang Jian was shocked, he also felt an indescribable sense of defeat. However, when he recalled the scene of Jiang Pengji killing people with the ivory baton, he couldn't help but be impressed. With such godly strength and skills, he did not lose unjustly. The eunuch and the imperial guards cleaned up the old woman's body and cleaned up the bloodstains on the ground. The young emperor was also carried away to change into a set of royal robes. It was not nice to hear that the emperor had peed himself in fear. It would be too absurd if the emperor continued to attend the court meeting in a robe that reeked of urine. With the help of the incense burner, the stench of blood in the air was diluted, but the thrilling scene just now was deeply imprinted in the minds of the officials. The ministers returned to their respective positions. Yang Tao patted his chest with some lingering fear. "Father, is Lu Shi really a woman?" Yang Jian used the ivory bat in his hand to slightly cover his face. He tilted his head and said to Yang Tao, Lu Zhongqing has already admitted to it. How can it be false? Yang Tao widened his eyes in shock and nervously swallowed his saliva. He recalled Jiang Pengji's ruthlessness in killing people on the battlefield and found it hard to accept. It's hard to imagine. He was originally a brave man, but how did he become a woman in one day? Yang Jian's army had cooperated with Jiang Pengji before, and Yang Tao liked to play with swords and spears. He had always regarded Jiang Pengji as a brother and confidant. So what if he's a woman? Yang Jian glared at his useless son. It doesn't matter whether he's a man or a woman. What's important is that he's now the governor of Wanzhou. Look at you. If it weren't for Xiaoyang helping you out, I wouldn't have dared to bring you out of the house. Yang Tao's personality worried Yang Jian a lot. If it weren't for Yin Lin, his caring nanny and best friend, watching over him, Yang Jian wouldn't have dared to bring Yang Tao out. He only had one son in this life, and he was afraid that his son would be too simple-minded and torment himself to death. Yang Tao hung his head and pursed his lips. Yang Jian was so angry that he wanted to hit someone. From what I can see, you look more like a noble lady than Lu Zhongqing's daughter. You're a man. What are you feeling wronged for? Raise your head. Yang Tao felt wronged every day. On the other side, Wu Ma Shang, who had finally escaped danger, returned to his seat. The officials around him moved away, avoiding him as if he was a poisonous snake. Although Wu Ma Shang kept saying that he was innocent, the scene just now was too horrifying. The officials were traumatized. Su Bei was silent. Su Fei seemed to have remembered something. He raised his hand and poked his cousin's waist with his ceremonial tablet. What are you doing? Su Bei glared at him angrily. Su Fei raised his eyebrows and said gloatingly, Brother Pei, if I remember correctly, you had a dancer serve Lu Shi? Su Bei's expression darkened. It would have been better if Su Fei hadn't brought that up. Now that he did, he got angry. Everyone here was a descendant of the Su family. Su Fei's backstabbing tactics were too vicious. Su Bei had always believed that Su Fei had tried to drive a wedge between him and the Lu family. Naturally, he wouldn't be nice to Su Fei now. You remember correctly. So what? There are men out there, and you don't allow Lu Shi to like women. Is such a small matter worth being surprised by? You're acting like you've never seen the world before. Su Bei was in a bad mood. His pig-like cousin had been stupid once or twice, but he'd just ruined his plans. He'd missed a chance to make the Lu family owe him a favor. Su Fei had wanted to see his cousin embarrass himself, but he hadn't expected him to have such a bad temper. Instead, he'd scolded him. This time, Su Fei also snorted coldly. The two brothers continued to stare at each other in disgust. As the subject of a discussion, Jiang Pengji was very calm. This time, she'd safely removed her appointment as Wanzhou's magistrate. The officials couldn't be jealous of her. They just stood there like background characters. How dare they be jealous? Think back to that old woman. One blink of an eye, she'd been alive and well. The next, she'd turned into a pile of dismembered corpses. They were all ordinary people. Their bodies weren't as tough as demons and ghosts. 5 ceremonial tablets weren't needed. One was enough to send them to the next world. The court meeting ended anticlimactic. The hundreds of officials and officials floated out of the main hall, still confused. In less than half a day, the news that Jiang Pengji was a woman spread like wildfire throughout the imperial city of Qinzhou. Ha ha! Master Yang, Master Feng, I've heard an especially funny joke today. Li Yun and the other generals were staying at the camp outside the city. However, he had nothing to do after training his troops, so he entered the city for a stroll. Halfway there, Li Yun heard an especially funny piece of news. He immediately came over to share it with Yang Si and Feng Zhen. Yang Si wasn't around. Feng Zhen held a scallion pancake in one hand and wrote cursive calligraphy. When he heard Li Yun's laughter, he almost made a mistake. What's the funny joke? Let me hear it. Feng Zhen put down his brush and stuffed the last piece of scallion pancake into his mouth. He drank a mouthful of tea to moisten his mouth. Someone outside says that our Lord is a woman. Ha ha ha. Don't you think it's funny? Feng Zhen looked at Li Yun with pity, as if he was caring for his retarded child. Li Yun laughed. When he realized that Feng Zhen didn't laugh with him, he stopped writing in boredom. You don't think it's funny? This is reality. Our Lord is a woman. Why should she laugh? Li Yun was speechless. Chapter 755. Feng Zhen glanced sideways at the bamboo scroll on his table, then looked at Li Yun's lifeless expression. His mood inexplicably improved. Mei, what's with that expression? Such a beautiful child on the outside, yet he was so dull on the inside. What a waste. Li Yun snapped out of his daze and said helplessly, Mr. Feng, am I dreaming right now? This dream feels too real. Feng Zhen was speechless and felt like teasing him. Why do you say it's a dream? Come. Stretch out your arm and let me pinch it for you. See if it hurts. Li Yun obediently did as he was told. He stretched out his muscular right arm and rolled up his sleeve, revealing tight muscles that made Feng Zhen green with envy. Thinking about the soft flesh on his arm, and then looking at Li Yun's tight biceps, he found it irritating no matter how he looked at it. Ouch. Mister, you're pinching too hard. Li Yun almost burst into tears. Feng Zhen wasn't pinching him with his fingers. He was clearly pinching him with his nails. It hurt like hell. Do you still feel like you're dreaming? Feng Zhen resumed his serious demeanor, making it impossible to tell that he was doing it deliberately. Mr. Feng, since I'm not dreaming, why do people outside say that my lord is a woman? Even you believe this absurd news? Li Yun put down his sleeve, feeling wronged. He felt dizzy, as if his mind was stuffed with too much information for him to digest. If he knew about the term sex change, he would probably suspect that when he woke up early in the morning, his lord had a sex change. Feng Zhen laughed involuntarily. Our lord is a woman, but because of some internal affairs, she had to disguise herself as a man. Do you understand? Li Yun nodded blankly, looking as if he was daydreaming. After a while, he suddenly remembered something. Mister, I think I've seen my lord dressed as a woman before. She clearly doesn't look like a woman. Li Yun clenched his fists nervously. He still found it hard to accept this reality. How can such an imposing man like my lord be a woman? Forgive me for being disrespectful, but I feel that if I were to dress as a woman, put on makeup, and tidy myself up, I would probably look more like a woman than my lord. What do you think, mister? Feng Zhen almost bit his own tongue. Li Yun, this silly child. How could he be so honest? However, looking at the handsome man in front of him with red lips and white teeth, Feng Zhen felt that Li Yun's words weren't unreasonable. When did you see the lord in women's clothes? Feng Zhen had been with Jiang Pengji for quite some time, but he had never seen her wear anything other than men's clothing. Li Yun answered honestly. When the lord first established the women's camp, the people of Xiangyang district suspected that the women's camp was an indecent brothel. Even the soldiers of the men's camp thought so. In order to change the impression of the female battalion in the eyes of others, the lord wore the uniform of the female battalion and chose the recruit camp of the male battalion. Right, I remember that Vice Commandant Dian was also one of those recruits. He should also have an impression. Thinking of this, Li Yun's face suddenly paled, the healthy flush on his cheeks fading. Feng Zhen was immersed in the gossip. He noticed Li Yun's odd behavior and hurriedly asked, What's wrong with you, Mei? Why do you look so pale? Are you feeling unwell? Li Yun shook his head slowly and stammered. Mr. Feng. Yin suddenly remembered something. When the Lord said that he wanted to disguise himself as a woman, Yin blurted out, A man as imposing as the Lord. If you disguise yourself as a woman, Yin won't look good. Yin didn't mean it when I said that. With the Lord's personality, he shouldn't have remembered it until now. Right? After a while, Li Yun still didn't receive a reply from Feng Zhen. He raised his head and observed Feng Zhen carefully. He realized that the other was looking at the position behind him with a faint smile. Wait, the position behind him? Li Yun's back stiffened, and he turned his head with a creak. Jiang Pengji crossed her arms and looked at Li Yun and Feng Zhen with interest. Yang Si followed behind her. My lord. Li Yun wasn't completely dumbfounded. He hurriedly sat up straight, but his heart was beating like a drum. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. I never knew that I had such an image in Han Mei's heart. How could he still remember the old scores from years ago? Jiang Pengji smiled as she walked into the main hall and knelt down at the head of the table. Li Yun's head drooped lower and lower. Seeing the group favorite Li Yun being bullied by Jiang Pengji, the viewers in the streaming room were heartbroken. Beauty Zhenmi. Trash streamer, you say you won't hold a grudge, but don't bully the little angel Han Mei. Trash Chow Pai. That's right, that's right. Look at how scared my Han Mei is. His face is several shades paler than usual. The viewers in the streaming room felt injustice for Li Yun. How would Li Yun know? He knew he had a guilty conscience. He lowered his head and admitted his mistake. The Lord is magnanimous. Naturally, you're not a petty person who haggles over minor matters. Jiang Pengji held back her laughter and waved her hand. Forget it, I won't tease you anymore. Look at you. It's as if I've bullied you. The alarm was lifted. Li Yun heaved a long sigh of relief. He quickly threw the risk to the back of his mind. He lifted his head and stared at Jiang Pengji's face. He wanted to say something, but stopped himself. Jiang Pengji supported her cheek with one hand and said, I'm indeed a woman. No matter how you look at me, I won't turn into a man. Instead of being surprised here, why don't you go back and practice your martial arts? You can't even defeat a woman like me, yet you still want to build a career and marry my one? Li Yun widened his eyes in shock. He stammered, my lord, I was wrong. Feng Zhen listened to their conversation. He held back his laughter until his cheeks hurt. Isn't the Lord holding a grudge? She was threatening Li Yun with every word. If he can't defeat her, he can forget about marrying Shangwan Wan. If this isn't holding a grudge, then what is? Li Yun was quite pitiful to have such a lord. Li Yun floated back to the campsite outside the city. When he started practicing his spear in a daze, he suddenly remembered something. Shouldn't he continue to be shocked or suspect that his lord is a woman? Why did he come here to practice his spear? After thinking about it, Li Yun felt that he couldn't be the only one who was confused. Vice Commandant Dian, have you heard the rumors in the city? Dian Yin was a pragmatic person. He liked to practice by himself when he had nothing to do. He did more than he spoke. What rumors? Li Yun said, it's already spread throughout the imperial city. They say that our lord is a woman. Dian Yin snorted coldly when he heard that. He threw the axes in his hands onto the ground. Which idiot dares to slander people like that? I'll chop him in half. Meng Hun, who had just finished practicing, happened to walk over. When he heard that, he echoed, how can you believe such a ridiculous thing? Li Yun was speechless. What if it's true? Li Yun asked softly. Dian Wei and Meng Hun were straightforward martial artists. It was easier to befriend honest people. Chapter 756. Meng Hun said in a tiger's voice, Han Mei, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't beat around the bush. Li Yun said directly, our lord is really a woman. Meng Hun raised his hand and touched Li Yun's forehead. He did not have a fever. I'm telling the truth. The lord has already admitted it. Li Yun gently pushed Meng Hun's hand away. You don't believe me? Who would believe such a joke? Meng Hun shook his head, and so did Dian Yin. Li Yun said, Deputy Commandant, Dian has seen the Lord in female attire. Have you forgotten that the Lord single-handedly challenged the men's recruit camp? Dian Yin was stunned for a moment. He carefully tried to recall the relevant memories, and only after a while did he find a vague impression. Under the gaze of his two companions, he said, I can't remember anything else. I only remember that the female soldier was quite manly. Li Yun, please don't let Master hear this. When Jiang Pengji revealed her true gender, not only were her subordinates in an uproar, but other forces were also discussing it. My lord is back. When Feng Ju heard the report from outside, he hurriedly got up to greet her. He was shocked to find that his lord's image was exceptionally bad. My lord, what's with the blood all over your body? What happened in the morning assembly today? Feng Ju was originally worried that Huang Song would be injured, but after taking a closer look, he heaved a sigh of relief. Apart from her pale face, there was nothing wrong with her. Huang Song raised his hand to wipe his face. When his fingertips touched the dried blood, The thrilling scene from before appeared in his mind again. His stomach felt uncomfortable again. He waved his hand and said in a low voice, "I'm fine. Today's court session is a long story. I'll go to the backyard to wash up and change my clothes." Feng Zhu thought of something and called out to Huang Song, "My lord, Madam came over this morning." Huang Song's nerves tightened. "Why is Madam here?" "As newlyweds. Of course I can't bear to part with my lord." Feng Zhu teased with a smile. Huang Song had been engaged 2 years ago. It was not until half a year ago that he married the noble woman of an aristocratic family. His wife's surname was Qi. This woman was bold and courageous. On the night of their wedding, she ordered her maid to guard outside the bridal chamber with a knife. Every time Huang Song went to the backyard, he felt wronged, as if he was handing over public goods to the boss. "This is killing me." Huang Song gritted his teeth, his expression as if he was in so much pain that he wanted to die. "All right," Feng Zhu continued. "The 2 young ladies that old master arranged for Lord were thrown out by Madam from the back door." Huang Song staggered and almost fell on the steps. His legs were trembling, and he had to hold onto the pillar to stand. He stuttered, "Huaijia, do you have an explanation? I didn't even lay a finger on those 2 ladies." Feng Zhu was not Jiang Pengji. She might occasionally have some wicked interests, but she did not like to torment her lord. "I've already told Madam, and she seems to be in a good mood. I gave the 2 women some money to settle down and sent them away." Huang Song heaved a long sigh of relief. He felt as if he had flown back to earth from hell. At the mention of Madame Qi, Huang Song felt his legs and stomach tremble. Before he got married, Huang Song had 3 maids serving him. They weren't even considered lowly concubines. After getting married, Lady Qi sent all 3 maids to the side courtyard the next day. He even left behind a sentence. If they wanted to find a way out and marry someone else, she would give them a dowry. If they dared to continue pestering Huang Song, she would send them to their deaths for free. Although Madame Qi was only 16 years old, she was very good at managing her husband. Huang Song was afraid of and loved her at the same time. Every time, he would consciously give in to her. "Is Madam in a good mood?" Huang Song asked again. Feng Zhu smiled faintly and said, "Not bad. Don't be afraid, Lord. If Madam saw Lord like this, she would feel sorry for you." "I'm relieved to hear that." Huang Song encouraged himself and went to the backyard. As Feng Zhu expected, Madame Qi was shrewish by nature, but she was still extremely protective of Huang Song. Seeing him like this, she immediately became angry. "Who dares to use weapons in the court?" Huang Song said, "Madam, don't be angry. If it weren't for this one's blood, I wouldn't have been able to come back today." After saying that, he honestly explained all the factors that might have caused family conflicts. In the end, he also told her about what had happened in the court. "Lanting and I are really good friends. I really didn't know that she was a woman. Madam, please don't believe the rumors in the outside world." Huang Song was really afraid of women. Having a beautiful wife at home was like a tiger, and having a good friend outside was like a wolf. Overnight, the whole world had changed. Madame Qi pinched her handkerchief. At first, she was a little jealous, but her husband's life had been saved by Jiang Pengji, so she felt relieved. "Bogeo, you say that as if I'm very narrow-minded. Since Lu Shi is your good friend, and he saved your life today, by right, our family should prepare a generous gift to thank him. You didn't know that he was a woman before, but now you can't act recklessly. If you want to come and thank him, I'll go on your behalf." Madame Qi pitifully wiped his face with a handkerchief and said, "I've already asked the servants to prepare hot soup and clean clothes. Bogeo, go wash up. I'll go to the storeroom first and prepare a thank you gift." Huang Song nodded as if he was pounding garlic. After taking a shower, Huang Song took his clothes to the front hall. Feng Zhu and Cheng Jing were talking. When Cheng Jing saw Huang Song coming over, he hurriedly asked, "What happened in the morning court today? I heard from Huaijia that someone started a war in the court." Huang Song nodded and said with a wretched expression, "I didn't look at the almanac when I went out today. I was almost implicated and killed." After a while, Huang Song thought of something and said to them mysteriously, "Do you believe that Lu Shi is a woman?" Fengzhu and Chengjing were speechless. Had their lord been bullied by his mistress until his brain was damaged? The forces that were more familiar with Jiang Pingji were also shocked by the news that they looked up at the sun. Did the sun rise from the west today? After the initial shock, everyone thought of another problem. Since Lu Shi was a woman, would the soldiers and counselors under her command still be as loyal as before? Many people secretly waited to watch a good show, such as a certain soldier or counselor who was dissatisfied with their lord's gender and resolutely rebelled. In the end, they were greatly disappointed. Jiang Pengji did what she was supposed to do, except for a few generals who didn't know the truth and gathered together in a daze. The others were not affected at all. As for the ordinary soldiers in the military camp, they had received favors or assistance from the female camp. They had also fought side by side with the soldiers of the female camp and killed the enemy together. They had a revolutionary comradeship and friendship with each other. Now that the stalwart lord had become a valiant woman, it was not so difficult to accept. Of course, there was another reason why they could accept the reality so quickly. Meng Hun and the others had increased the intensity of training the soldiers. All the soldiers were exhausted and had no extra energy to gossip. The news that should have set off a monstrous storm was quietly accepted by ordinary people. The news of the dismemberment with the ceremonial tablet flowed from the mouths of the officials to the marketplace and spread like wildfire. The people were not surprised that a woman could become the magistrate of Wanzhou. Instead, they were shocked that such a heroic young talent was actually a woman. Chapter 757. When Jiang Pengji stepped into the backyard, Huijun had been waiting by the door for a long time. With a gentle and appropriate smile on her face, she knelt down and bowed respectfully. "Thank you for your hard work, Lang Jun. How was the court meeting today?" Huijun stood up and reached out to take the official's hat and ceremonial tablet that Jiang Pengji had taken off. Her gaze was gentle, like a pool of limpid spring water. Even though she used makeup to reduce the beauty of her face, her gentle and virtuous temperament still tickled the hearts of the viewers in the live broadcast room. Guojia is not a country. I really envy men in ancient times. No wonder they like to hug each other. Every day when they get home from work, they can receive gentle greetings from their wives. Just this alone can make a man throw away the worries of the day. Oh yes, I am a girl. Sunyu is not a gohi. Upstairs, you can work harder to earn money to support your family and let your boyfriend stay at home to take care of his wife and children. Jiasu is not Jiayu. I second Lord Sun's suggestion. The audience had all seen Huijuan's true appearance. To put it bluntly, Huijuan's appearance could instantly kill all the female celebrities in the entertainment industry. In terms of looks alone, she was definitely an unshakable goddess-like figure. According to the comments of the audience in the live broadcast room, Huijuan's face had become the template for plastic surgery hospitals in South Korea. Female stars in the entertainment industry had followed suit, which showed how outstanding Huijuan's appearance was. There were some twists and turns, but it went well. Huijun was startled. She lowered her head and asked, "Lang Jun, why must you restore your identity at this time?" Jiang Pengji explained, "This is an opportunity. The power isn't too great, and it can cause the world to object, but it's not small either, and it can be bullied and humiliated. If I wait until my forces continue to grow and reveal my true identity, it will undoubtedly cause the enemy forces to band together and attack me together." Huijuan's expression was gloomy as she rolled up her sleeves. "Your servant is ashamed that I was unable to continue helping Lang Jun." Jiang Pengji laughed and rubbed her hair. "Your previous life was too bitter. Enjoy your next life in peace. I will take care of these matters properly. There is no need for you to continue sacrificing yourself." The honey trap was just an expedient measure. It was a fair deal between Jiang Pengji and Huijun. Now that the transaction had been settled, she could not push Huijun, who had already escaped from the pit of fire, back into it. "If you're bored, I'll assign you a mission when we get back to Wanzhou. That way, you won't have to work as a maid all day." Huijun smiled faintly and teased, "It's already a great blessing to be able to serve Lang Jun." I even snatched this job from your handmaidens. I didn't know I was so popular. Jiang Pengji secretly rolled her eyes and mocked herself. There are many things that you don't know. Huijun followed a step behind Jiang Pengji. By the way, since you've recovered your true identity, do you want to adjust your attire? I don't think it's a good idea to dress as a man all the time. Oh, prepare a few sets of women's clothing. Something simple and plain will do. Whether it was men's or women's clothing, Jiang Pengji did not have a preference, as long as it was convenient for her to move around. Huijun was already prepared. She brought out a plate from the back hall with 2 sets of women's clothing stacked on top of it. I made this in my spare time. Why don't you try it and see how big it is? When Jiang Pengji saw the style and size of the clothes, she knew that Huijun had specially made them for her. Okay, fortunately, there was not much difference between men's and women's clothing in ancient times. It was Jiang Pengji's first time wearing women's clothing, so she was not a loss. She untied the heavy white cloth that was wrapped around her chest and released her long-suppressed cleavage. She took a deep breath and felt that the air was fresh. Jiang Pengji looked down and muttered, "It's wise to recover my identity now. Otherwise, I'll suffocate to death one day." Because of the optimization of his body, Lu Shi's skinny body grew very well. Not only was he tall, but his cleavage was also developing well. Huijun was very well prepared. She had even prepared a private item, such as a dudu. Jiang Pengji raised her hand and massaged her cleavage, which was rarely relaxed. It seemed that it was necessary to play with her bra. After all, she could not treat herself badly. Not long after, Jiang Pengji was dressed neatly. It looks a little weird, she tugged at her sleeves. The overall color of the women's clothing was green. It was not too lively, but it did not look too old-fashioned either. It was just that there was a strange feeling of a boss in women's clothing. Looking at Jiang Pengji's attire, Huijun, who was waiting outside, laughed out loud. "Langjun, you haven't changed your hairstyle." Naturally, it was awkward to wear a woman's attire while wearing a man's hairstyle. Jiang Pengji had been in this world for so many years, but she could only comb her hair into a ponytail. Naturally, she had to let others help her with her hairstyle. Huijun did not help her comb her hair into a luxurious and complicated hairstyle. Instead, she chose the most common hairstyle. Other than that, there were no additional accessories. Not to mention a hawksbill hairpin or a buyao. She did not even wear a woman's dress. She did not wear any exquisite jewelry. It's too plain and clean. Even the maidservants who serve you wear 1 or 2 plain silver hairpins. As Huijun spoke, she raised her hand to help Jiang Pengji fix the shape of her brows. She looked less fierce and more gentle. Jiang Pengji closed her eyes and allowed Huijun to move around on her face. But Langjun is not suitable for those luxurious decorations. Langjun is different from those women who like to look good. She wanted to choose a pair of pearl earrings for Jiang Pengji to wear, but in the end, she helplessly realized that Jiang Pengji did not have piercings. Jiang Pengji opened her eyes and looked at the heroic girl in the bronze mirror. The corners of her mouth twitched. Finally, she did not have the weird feeling of being a boss in women's clothing. Langjun's lips are a little pale. A little rouge will make them look better. That's good. Jiang Pengji opened the streaming room. 150,000 viewers swarmed in. Then, Mei Ernyang. Where's the streamer? Where did the streamer go? Wither into dust. Something big has happened. The streamer is missing. The viewers in the streaming room subconsciously looked for the familiar figure of the young man. They were shocked to find that the streamer was not in the streaming room. Huan Zixingchen. Wait, the lady beside Miss Huijun. Is she the streamer? Everyone stared at Jiang Pengji's face carefully. It was indeed the streamer's face. Mo Lingyin. After following the streaming for so many years, I finally see the streamer in women's clothing. I feel like I have no regrets in this life. Haosan Qinshui. I thought I would see the King Kong Barbie Neza version of the streamer. I didn't expect her to be so pretty. Jiang Pengji did not look like a man. It was just that her appearance was more heroic. When she wore women's clothing and combed her hair into a bun, no one would suspect that she was a man. In a split second, The bullet screen of the entire streaming room was filled with exclamation marks and horrified emojis. The corner of Jiang Pengji's eye twitched. Only then did she resist the urge to forcibly close the streaming room. Hui Jun, do you think I will scare people if I go out like this? Hui Jun covered her lips and smiled faintly. Lang Jun, you look suave and elegant in men's clothing. You look heroic in women's clothing. How will you scare people? Chapter 758. My neck hurts, and there's no more tea. Feng Zhen put down his pen and used his fist to massage his aching neck. He moved his toes. After sitting for so long, he felt like his legs didn't belong to him anymore. Yangxi rummaged through a pile of bamboo slips and said without looking up, "There's no more tea. Just ask the servant girl in the pantry to refill it." Feng Zhen smiled meaningfully. That's great. The servant girl in the pantry is good at massaging. Yangxi looked down and said, "You're really not afraid of trouble. Who knows what these servants used to be?" The imperial city of Qinzhou had been through a disaster. Many officials had been taken captive, leaving behind many concubines, female slaves, maids, and servants. The mansion they were living in had been left behind by someone else. The maids they were using had been found later. Feng Zhen said, "I'm just letting her massage my shoulders to relax. I'm not doing anything else." To be honest, ever since Feng Zhen became Jiang Pengji's subordinate, he had been much more restrained. In the past, he slept with women every day. Now, he couldn't even touch a girl's hand for months, let alone develop a relationship. Compared to before, his life now was like that of a delicate monk with few desires. He was about to weep for himself when light footsteps came from outside. The shadow in the hall slowly approached. Feng Zhen didn't even raise his head as he said, "Go fill up the tea on the table and give me a shoulder massage. Use the same amount of strength as yesterday." After a while, the other party didn't move. "You want me to fill your tea and massage your shoulders?" A familiar voice came from above his head. The tone of the voice carried a hint of indescribable warning. Feng Zhen didn't recognize it and immediately laughed. "What? Is it hard for you to fill my tea and massage my shoulders?" At that moment, the comments in the live stream room all felt sorry for Feng Zhen and hoped that the streamer would teach him a lesson. Wahao AIGG. Warning ahead. Your dissolute Prince Charming Feng Zhen is about to be beaten by the streamer. Sui Feng Xiao say, "I really want to grab Feng Longzi's shoulders and shake him. Isn't it good to be alive? Why do you want to die?" Zhang Sun Wu Shuang. Yeah, why do you want to die? Let the streamer fill his tea. I think the streamer will pinch his chin and pour the whole pot of hot water down his throat. Let the host massage his shoulders? No. Was he sure he wouldn't break his collarbone? Feng Zi sure. I dare to pinch you, but I'm afraid you don't have the guts to let me pinch you. You seem to be living a good life. You're working, yet you still have the leisure to let a maid serve you and massage your shoulders? Jiang Pengji took 2 steps forward, and her snow-white socks came into view. Feng Zhen's heart skipped a beat when he heard the other party call him by his surname and courtesy name. His voice had even changed to the familiar tone he was used to. He slowly raised his head like a criminal awaiting his death sentence. Yeah, she bent her knees slightly and squatted down to meet his gaze. "Zisher, do you want to try my cooking?" Feng Zhen was so shocked that he leaned back. His movement was a little too big, and he fell to the ground. He hurriedly got up and said seriously, "Greetings, my lord." Jiang Pengji smiled and asked him, "You haven't answered my question." Feng Zhen's expression immediately turned bitter, as if he had eaten a whole basket of bitter gourds. What the hell was going on? If he had known that the woman who came in was not a maid, but Jiang Pengji, he wouldn't have ordered her around unless he had a death wish. However, his lord dressed in women's clothes didn't seem so unsightly to the eyes. She was much better than the burly man dressed in women's clothes that Feng Zhen had imagined. Yang Si, who had been watching the entire scene, couldn't help but burst out laughing. Feng Zhen was reaping what he sowed. He deserved to be shocked. Yang Jingrong, you're so sincere in watching people embarrass themselves. Feng Zhen was a little uncomfortable at first. He felt that it was a little weird to face his lord dressed in women's clothes, but the urge to criticize Yang Si won out. Yang Si supported his cheek with one hand and laughed. If you hadn't given someone something to use against you, who would have watched you? You're too careless in making friends. Yang Si clearly knew that Jiang Pengji was coming, but he didn't even warn him. Instead, he coldly watched him embarrass himself. Feng Zhen wanted to say something, but a servant's voice came from outside. My lord, County Chief Huang's wife is here to visit. Jiang Pengji was surprised. County Chief Huang's wife? Who is it? Yang Si thought about it and said, it should be Huang Song's wife. I don't know why she's here. Jiang Pengji was shocked. Huang Bogeo has a wife. When did he get married? Why didn't he inform us? Since Huang Song's wife had come to visit, Jiang Pengji naturally couldn't stop her from entering. She could only receive her personally. Yang Si said, my lord, do you need to dress up a little more? If you receive a guest like this, it's too plain. Jiang Pengji said indifferently, your lord is not an ordinary woman in the backyard. Who would see me dressed up? How improper would that be? After she finished speaking, she strode away. Her one step was faster than an ordinary woman's 2 or 3. Looking at her height, she was tall and slender. Ordinary men would feel pressured, let alone those petite women. Yang Si looked at her and felt a faint stomachache. He felt that his lord wasn't wearing the wrong clothes, but had clearly reincarnated into the wrong body. Huang Song's wife was settled in the living room. When Jiang Pengji went over, she found 2 maids with knives at their waists standing outside the door. She didn't even frown. She walked in with a natural expression and saw a young girl with a bright and beautiful face sitting on the lower right. She was young and had a woman's bun. She should be Huang Song's wife. Yi Cho Chang, oh my God. Huang Song's wife looks like a girl in her first year of high school. She's actually married. Jiang Pengji's thoughts coincided with the audience's. Huang Song's wife was still a young girl, but she already had the steadiness of an adult. Your servant, Huang Qi greets the magistrate of Liuzhou. When Jiang Pengji sat down, Huang Song's wife bowed to her. The 4 maids with knives behind her also bowed. Jiang Pengji discovered that not only did the maids carry knives, but Huang Song's wife also practiced martial arts. She had 2 knives on her waist belt. TSK, TSK. She was a real hot pepper. She wondered if Huang Song was usually afraid of this young wife. Bogeo and I are close friends. You're treating me like an outsider with such great respect. Compared to Huang Song's wife, who was dressed up and had no lack of hawksbill hairpins, Jiang Pengji seemed especially gloomy. However, the auras of the 2 were different. Even if Jiang Pengji didn't wear any makeup, she could still bring great pressure to the other party. Magistrate of Liuzhou, save my husband at the court meeting. I can't skip this courtesy. Jiang Pengji responded with an oh and said, it's nothing. Did Lady Qi specially come over to thank me? Yes, but I don't know what you like. If there's anything inappropriate, please forgive me. Jiang Pengji glanced at the gifts placed below. They were all high-quality rouge, face powder, and cloth jewelry. She couldn't help but be speechless. She knew the reason for her visit. Thank you very much. This time, it was Lady Qi's turn to be surprised. Aren't you angry, Magistrate? Chapter 759. Lady Qi's face was full of admiration. She said sincerely, Governor, you're really not an ordinary woman. You're not an ordinary woman either. Jiang Pengji lowered her eyelids and glanced at the pile of gifts. She then glanced at the maids with knives behind Lady Qi. The audience in the streaming room was dumbfounded. Even through the screen, they could still feel that the atmosphere in the picture was a little strange. You went on well. Can anyone tell me what Huang Song's lowly wife means? I feel like my IQ is not enough. If it was a mockery, her gift of rouge and jewelry would not cause the streamer any trouble. If it was a show of goodwill, I feel a little strange. If it were other women giving rouge, face powder, and cloth jewelry would certainly not be so out of place. However, if it were Jiang Pengji, even the dullest audience would feel that something was wrong. Rouge, face powder, cloth jewelry. These things that girls like seem to be very different from the streamer style. Chua Rimidu. Haha. Maybe she's jealous? Think about it. When a streamer and Huang Song were together, how many times did they go to the brothel? They held a little beauty in their arms, listened to songs and watched dances, and looked like good brothers. If I were Huang Song's wife, I would definitely feel uncomfortable. However, giving rouge, face powder, and so on is something that I've seen too much of. I feel that her actions are particularly refreshing. Many people think that this is just a girl's jealousy. It's not a big deal at all. However, there are still many viewers who disagree. Xinjia, I don't agree that Huang Song's wife's methods are refreshing. She seems reckless and headstrong, but she's actually very shrewd. It's not as simple as jealousy. It's provocation and testing. Have you ever seen a maid carry a knife when visiting someone's house or thanking them? As for the gifts given by Huang Song's wife, there's definitely nothing wrong with them on a woman. The streamer said that they're all good things. Can you say that these gifts are not thoughtful? But the problem is that the streamer is not an ordinary woman. Using rouge as a gift is very provocative. Lao Sijiliaming. For an inappropriate example, Prime Minister Zhuge gave Sima women's clothes before the battle. Do you think this is appropriate? Anyone with a discerning eye knows that it's not appropriate to give the streamer rouge and face powder. It's better to change it to medicinal herbs and jade. It's not outstanding, but it's also not wrong. Madame Huang Song must have known this. Otherwise, she wouldn't have asked the streamer, "Are you angry?" She must have done this on purpose. On purpose? The live stream viewers were stunned. If no one had reminded them, they wouldn't have noticed the detail of carrying a knife. Indeed, who would be armed to the teeth when going out to thank a guest? Most of the audience were on the main streamer's side. They would subconsciously protect Jiang Pengji's interests. Their impression of Huang Song's wife was a little worse. Madame Qi shook her head in shame and waved her hand, motioning for the 4 maids behind her to retreat. After the maid retreated, Madame Qi raised her hand to remove the knife from her waist and pushed it a few feet forward, away from where she could touch it. "Prefecture Governor, you're praising me too much. In your eyes, I'm just a vulgar woman who only knows how to be jealous, right?" Jiang Pengji calmly watched her movements. Why does Madame say that? If Madame only knew how to be jealous, then the things that were sent to her door would not be good. It would be better to casually pick some ordinary things. Since Madame dares to bring these things to your door, isn't it because you're certain that you can achieve your goal and retreat unscathed? She clearly knew that Jiang Pengji could dismember people with an ivory baton, yet she still had the guts to come and test her. This could no longer be summed up as being bold. However, being bold did not mean being reckless. In Jiang Pengji's opinion, Madame Qi was quite scheming. The livestream viewers felt that Madame Qi was provoking her because of Huang Song, but Jiang Pengji didn't think so. The purpose of this person's visit was to test her more than to provoke her. Jealousy was just an added bonus. To put it bluntly, in the face of a gift from Madame Qi, there was no woman who would not like it. If Jiang Pengji acted like she liked it very much, it could only show that she was an ordinary woman who liked colors. A woman who loved beauty and was somewhat vain was naturally easy to deal with, because this was a weakness. If she flew into a rage, Madame Qi would not be surprised. This showed that Jiang Pengji's future achievements would be limited. Even if she was already the prefecture governor, she was limited by her identity as a woman and did not have enough magnanimity and foresight. How far could she go in the future? It was even more reassuring. In the end, Jiang Pengji's reaction was neither of the above two. She was not angry. Instead, she gladly accepted the gift. Her purpose was to give it to a beautiful woman, to present Buddha with borrowed flowers. Not only did it show her tolerance and magnanimity, but it also helped to save Madame Qi's face. The more she did this, the more Madame Qi did not dare to look down on her. So she ordered the maid to retreat and unsheathed the knife at her waist to show that she was on good terms with her. She was sure that even if Jiang Pengji was a woman, her advantages would not be diminished because of this, and her future achievements would not stop at being the prefecture governor of Wanzhou. She must be a formidable opponent. Madame Qi said, "Compared to my petty cleverness, your magnanimity and magnanimity are what make people tremble in fear." Jiang Pengji used a declarative sentence. I don't think Huang Song asked you to prepare these gifts. Bogeo doesn't know about this, Madame Chi said. This is my decision. I hope this will not affect the friendship between you and Bogeo. I guess so. Even if Huang Bogeo had the intention to test me, he wouldn't have the guts. Regardless of whether there would be a conflict with Huang Song in the future, at least for now, they were still friends who could talk to each other. Jiang Pengji smiled and teased. Madam, aren't you worried? Madame Chi twirled her handkerchief and rolled her eyes. I was a little worried before I came, but I'm not worried now. She smiled guiltily and said, I know that Bogeo isn't a very good person, but I admire him from head to toe. The two of us are husband and wife who drank the nuptial wine. In my eyes, he's the best husband in the world. However, your magnanimity and magnanimity are completely different from the women in the world who are in love. If it was a man, I might have fallen in love with someone else. He's so outstanding, so I naturally wouldn't think highly of Bogeo. I won't be delusional and think that Bogeo can attract your attention. Jiang Pengji laughed involuntarily. If he heard what you said, he would fight me to the death. She asked the maid outside to put away Madame Chi's gifts. Madame Chi asked her with interest. Just now, you said that you wanted to present Buddha with borrowed flowers. I wonder which beauty is so blessed. In my opinion, all the women in the world are unparalleled beauties. How can this be considered a blessing? It's how it should be. When Madame Chi heard this, a smile bloomed on her face, and she complained half-truthfully. I feel that it's a pity that the governor is a woman, but I'm also a little glad. Why do you say that? If the governor is a man, how fortunate would it be for the woman who can make you hold her in the palm of your hand and cherish her? But how sad would it be for those women who adore you but can't get their hands on you? Madame Chi said, Fortunately, the governor is a woman. Chapter 760. Although there was some friction at the beginning, the conversation was still relatively pleasant. Seeing that the sky outside was slightly dark, Lady Chi said with a smile, I had a pleasant conversation with you. We hit it off at first sight. I was so happy that I forgot the time. If I delay any longer, I'm afraid I'll delay your official business. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. Please do as you please, my lady. The security in the city is unstable now. If anything goes wrong on the way, I won't be able to explain it to Bogeo. Jiang Pengji arranged for someone to escort Lady Chi back. Huang Bogeo is really lucky to have a good wife. Hui Jun was a little happy when she received the generous gift. When she heard that it was from Huang Song's wife, she was immediately displeased. Good wife. I can't tell. If it weren't for Longjuan's magnanimity and not bothering with such a vulgar woman, I'm afraid she would have caused trouble for Chief Huang. Hui Jun frowned. She said that she came to thank Lang Jun for saving her husband, but her actions aren't like that. Who would come to thank you fully armed? Those maids all seem to be trained. It's not a problem for them to deal with one or two ordinary burly men. Jiang Pengji laughed involuntarily and raised her hand to poke Hui Jun's furrowed brows. Seeing that Hui Jun exclaimed and raised her hand to cover the space between her brows, Jiang Pengji said, Do you also think that Huang Song's wife has no guts? She's not reckless, but she's not worthy of Longjuan's praise. Hui Jun thought of those precious items and frowned even more fiercely. Lang Jun was different from ordinary women. He was more outstanding than ordinary men. Why would he need to deal with cosmetics? I think you're quite jealous. Jiang Pengji smiled helplessly and shook her head. The matter of her giving rouge and cosmetics depends on how others interpret it. Don't forget that it's also a big trend for men to wear cosmetics nowadays. Not only do women use it, but men use it even more. Strictly speaking, there's nothing wrong with her gift this time. The fault lies in the fact that your Lang Jun is a woman and not a man. That's why there's a dispute. Hui Jun snorted softly, feeling unsettled. Is she certain that Lang Jun won't be able to do anything? What else? Jiang Pengji said, If I were to go against the grain and insist that she gave me rouge and cosmetics to humiliate me, wouldn't that mean that I also mind my identity as a daughter? Otherwise, why would he be so angry? What's more, according to the current fashion, even men giving each other cosmetics was considered elegant. let alone this matter. If I get angry, I'll just be a joke to the people outside. This was the best way to deal with it. I still don't like her, Hui Jun said. I'm angry. She is Huang Song's wife. Naturally, she will protect Huang Song for free. Jiang Pengji smiled. You're my family. Naturally, you will protect me. Let's go and see what good things Madam Qi has sent. If the goods aren't good enough, I'll blackmail Huang Song for some. This matter quickly reached the ears of Feng Zhen and Yang Si. A visitor with a knife. Who on earth is this Madam Qi? How dare she be so bold? Feng Zhen frowned at first, but when he heard that his lord had successfully settled the matter, he secretly heaved a sigh of relief and began to pay attention to the gossip. Yang Si thought about it carefully and said, the surname is Qi. Could it be the Qi family whose ancestors had 2 military officers? The Grand Commandant was in charge of martial arts. His salary was 10,000 stones, and he had a golden seal and purple ribbon. The Qi family was a martial family. During the Great Xia dynasty, they had produced 2 military officers in a row. At the end of the Great Xia dynasty, the Qi family was dragged into the battle for the throne. They lost by a single move, and the entire family was liquidated by the new emperor. The Qi family decisively cut off their tail to protect themselves. Although their vitality was greatly damaged, at least their legacy was not broken. However, it was said that the Qi family had few descendants in the past 2 generations. It was a little difficult to pass on their legacy. Feng Zhen rolled up his sleeves and sighed. Who knows? If she's really a woman from the Qi family, it's not surprising that she did this. Yang Si lit the oil lamps in the hall and added 2 more lamps to his table so that he wouldn't have to spend too much effort reading official documents. Huang Song is really lucky. Yang Si took out a roll of bamboo slips. It's a pity that our Lord can't take this shortcut. Others could use marriage to strengthen themselves, but their Lord was a woman. If she wanted to do this, she could only let someone marry into her family. Was it something that decent people would be willing to do? Even if it was an ordinary family, as long as they didn't starve to death, they wouldn't easily marry into their family. Although their Lord had done very well, her identity as a woman was still a shortcoming. Therefore, she needed to do her best to smooth out the injustice. Fairness was never given out by outsiders. One could only rely on oneself to fight for it. Feng Zhen twirled the beard that he had just begun to grow. She doesn't need it either. She had been able to go from poverty to where she was now without relying on Lu Shi. Now that she had restored her original form and was in control of Wanzhou, how could it be more difficult than before? Elsewhere, Huang Song happened to find out by chance that his lady had prepared a thank-you gift for Jiang Pengji. He was instantly scared out of his wits. Gift of rouge, face powder, cloth jewelry. Huang Song restrained himself again and again before he managed to suppress the urge to lift the person up by the collar. Was this the lady's own idea, or was it instigated by you wicked servants? How could the servants dare to say that they had instigated it? The entire backyard was Lady Qi's world. Not to mention Huang Song, the male master. The other servants were so disciplined that they didn't dare to say anything. Yes, it was the lady's own decision. Huang Song was like a deflated doll. He felt like his whole body was about to go limp. All of you can leave. Just as he was about to send them out, he remembered something and called them back. How long has the lady been out? It's been about 4 hours. 4 hours? Huang Song looked at the sky, which was almost completely dark. His face suddenly darkened. The lady hasn't returned yet? The servant replied, she hasn't returned yet. Huang Song was anxious and said, prepare the horse immediately. He was quite confident in Jiang Pengji. She was magnanimous. He also had confidence in his lady. Although she had a temper, she wouldn't go overboard. However, if the 2 of them were to meet, Huang Song wouldn't have the slightest bit of confidence. The coachman had just brought the horse over. Before Huang Song could mount the horse, Lady Qi's carriage had already leisurely stopped in front of the door. Madam, are you all right? Huang Song hurriedly went up to greet her. What can happen to me? The governor of Liuzhou isn't a jackal. He won't eat me. Lady Qi glanced at him as if she was rebuking him. Her young and beautiful face had a hint of sharpness. I I'm afraid that you'll hurt each other. Huang Song swallowed his words and said, I'm worried about the lady. Lanting's temperament has always been difficult to understand. When I heard that you sent a pile of rouge and face powder just now, I almost broke out in a sweat. Lady Qi rolled her eyes at Huang Song. I'm not giving her a menstrual band. It's just some high-quality rouge and face powder. Both men and women can use it, and it doesn't violate any taboo. If she accepts it magnanimously, not only will it help both parties maintain their dignity, but it will also become a good story. If outsiders know about it, at most they'll say that I'm a petty woman and praise her for being magnanimous and extraordinary. If she even cares about this, it shows how broad-minded she is. A narrow-minded woman, no matter what her starting point was now, would have a very difficult time in the future. As long as Jiang Pengji wasn't stupid, she would definitely not make the wrong move. Huang Song was choked and speechless. Chapter 761. How is Bogeo's relationship with Lu Prefecture's governor? Madame Qi took off her cloak to keep out the cold and handed it to the maid. We have a good relationship. We used to go together, Huang Song said casually. When his eyes met his wife's stern eyes, he immediately swallowed the rest of his words. It was not convenient to talk about their romantic past. Anyway, we have a good personal relationship. Fortunately, Lady Qi didn't care about what he didn't finish. I think that Lu Prefecture's overseer is extraordinarily ambitious. After today's conversation, I feel that her restoring her identity as a woman may not be passive but active. Madame Qi sat down, picked up the tea that the maid had poured for her, and took a sip to moisten her mouth. Her words were astonishing. Huang Song frowned and said, That's impossible. Lanting's identity is well hidden. If it weren't for today's incident, I'm afraid I wouldn't have discovered it. Furthermore, what good was there in restoring his identity? If Lanting had been a man, he would have been conferred the title of governor of Wanzhou. With her father's power, he would have been able to sit firmly in the north. The imperial court was on the brink of death, and it was clear that there was no hope for them to be saved. This was merely the final radiance of the setting sun. Other than causing trouble for him, what other benefits did she gain from returning to her female identity? If you hide it, your future will be limitless. Why bother? As for the marriage of children, compared to his future prospects, this was not a problem at all. As for having children, she could find a man she liked in private. Wouldn't it be easy for her to give birth to a child for herself? As for the father of the child, he could either keep him or kill him. There were ways to deal with him without leaving any traces. If it wasn't for someone else exposing her or her own stupidity, how could she have discovered her true identity? How would they find out? Who would suspect that the playmate they drank with all day was a woman? Whether it was his words, actions, or style of doing things, he couldn't see any flaws at all. As for Jiang Pengji's appearance, according to the current trend, there were many men who were more effeminate than her. Lady Qi raised her eyelids and rolled her eyes at her husband. This is a woman's intuition. What do you know? Today, he had a pleasant conversation with the governor of Liuzhou. He did not feel the slightest bit unhappy that his identity had been exposed, nor did he feel confused or hesitant about the outside world. On the contrary, he seemed to have been prepared. If that's really the case, then this Lu province overseer's ambition is definitely greater than I imagined. Faced with his wife's speculation, Huang Song only gave one response. Oh, Lady Qi said, Oh what? Give me some reaction. Huang Song laughed and said, What kind of reaction can your husband give? Lanting was ambitious. This was not the first time he had found out about this. Their current relationship was still fine, so they could talk about the future in the future. I can't cut ties with Lanting just because she's too ambitious, right? Madame Qi said. Even so, you have to be prepared. You have to keep an eye on Haozhou. This place is located at the border between the north and the south. Based on the current development of the two of them, there would definitely be a day when their interests would collide. Huang Song smiled and raised his hand to pull his wife into his arms. The couple's posture was intimate, as if they were hugging a doll. He said in a low voice, It's not that I don't understand Madame's thoughts, but now is not the time. Lanting is powerful and is entrenched in the north. However, that is only on the surface. In the next few years, I will only cooperate with her. There will be no conflict. It's too early for you to worry. Why? Madame Chi was surprised. Huang Song said in a low voice, "In the north, there are not only the Lu father and son, but also the northern borderline. As long as the northern borderline existed, Lanting's power would be restricted to the northern borderline. Starting a dispute with her, because of me, would be courting death. She will peacefully develop to the north, and I will develop from the north to the south. We will form an alliance and not interfere with each other. When she deals with the northern borderline, we will be completely at odds with each other. Do you understand?" Personal friendship was personal, and official business was official business. Not only did Jiang Pingji see it clearly, but Huang Song also understood it. United, they were friends. Divided, they were enemies. Whether they were enemies or friends depended on their standpoint. Originally, I thought that Lanting's chances of winning against the forces of the northern borderline were not high. Now that I look at it, I feel that the chances are 50-50. Huang Song lowered his eyes slightly and said, "In terms of magnanimity alone, there are very few in the world who can surpass her. Unfortunately, she is not a man." Madame Chi raised her hand and pinched the soft flesh on his waist. She bared her canine teeth and said, "What's wrong with being a woman? Can't women do big things?" "Madam, I didn't mean that. It hurts, it hurts. Let go. My flesh is about to turn purple." Huang Song begged for mercy repeatedly. Madame Chi only let go after a while. "Then do you hope that she can win against the northern borderline? The northern borderline is an outsider. How many innocent people have been slaughtered? Naturally, I hope that Lanting can win. If she is unable to do so, I will definitely do my best to help her." Huang Song secretly sucked in a breath of cold air and rubbed the area pitifully. Madame Chi's grip was still so strong. Women were really not to be trifled with. As he rubbed, he complained, "Sigh, Madam has caused unnecessary trouble this time. I will have to spend some of my private money again." Madame Chi's ears pricked up. "Are you saying that I have caused unnecessary trouble for you?" Huang Song bit her earlobe and said with a smile, "If you had given me something else, others would only think that I have a good personal relationship with Lanting. It would be normal for Madame to visit and thank me. But now, I have given her rouge and face powder. Even if Lanting doesn't mind, it is difficult to guarantee that outsiders will not maliciously gossip and drive a wedge between us. To be safe, I have to personally visit her tomorrow and give her a double gift. I have to be serious." Madame Chi pouted, but did not say anything. Huang Song continued, "Otherwise, if others deliberately humiliate Lanting in the future and ask the lady of the inner house to step in for everything, guess what will happen? Not only will she deal with those people, but she will also deal with your husband. Just in case, I will spend money to avert disaster." It had to be said that Huang Song still had some understanding of Jiang Pingji. Madame Chi said, "That's fine. I will go to the storeroom again and pick some good ones." The couple had not seen each other for a long time. It was far better than being newlyweds. That night, they were inseparable. As soon as they stopped, the flustered voice of the maid came from outside. At the same time, Jiang Pengji, who was about to rest, also received similar news. "The corpse is gone." Jiang Pengji wore a cloak to ward off the cold and held a roll of bamboo slips in her hand. The servant who was reporting to her turned pale. The servant trembled and said, "Yes, I heard that a gust of demonic wind blew past, and the remains of the corpse disappeared. His lord was the main force in killing the demon. It was difficult to guarantee that the demon would not cause trouble for his lord after it was resurrected. Thinking that there would be a demon secretly watching the mansion, the servant's face turned ashen. If it's gone, then it's gone. Is there a need to make such a fuss?" Jiang Pengji waved her hand to dismiss the servant. Looking at the light on the lamp, Jiang Pengji reached out and teased the flame. "It has been killed 3 times and resurrected 3 times. I suppose that part of the popularity points stored in the system have been consumed," she muttered in a low voice, her eyes filled with a cold light. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.